Chapter 382. This was the Lishui Dragon Palace. Although it was a dragon palace, it was different from the magnificent crystal palace in the legends. It was just a group of classical buildings in the Celestial Empire with a large garden. If there was anything special about this place, it would probably be that the plants planted in the garden were more like giant algae or aquatic plants than the ornamental plants that were commonly seen on land. Crabs and other creatures could also be seen hurriedly crawling through the forest, like the Earth Temple. This place was similar to a divine kingdom. Even if an ordinary person had the ability to drain the Lishui River and turn it upside down, they would not be able to find it. After Su Xinxing split the tribulation lightning, and even split a hole in the sky with an icicle, even the Lishui Dragon King understood that he was not immortal, no matter how slow he was. In addition, after Emoli drank the amount of water that would cause a flood, the Lishui Dragon King and the former Earth Goddess no longer had a reason to continue fighting. In the end, the Lishui Dragon King simply welcomed everyone into his dragon palace. Although there is no meaning in saying this now, I still have to say, the strength of the exalted immortal really surprised me. There are probably no more than 3 people that I have seen in my life who can split the tribulation lightning so easily. One of them was the monkey that beat up his father. Of course, he would not continue talking about it. Since ancient times, the people of the Celestial Empire had a habit of discussing matters at the dining table. Aoli ordered the shrimp soldiers and crab generals to hold a banquet. Of course, it was not really a table of dishes, but the more common type of dining in ancient public places. Su Xinxing looked at the crustaceans in front of him that had turned red due to being cooked. They looked like some kind of seafood. After hesitating for a while, he did not dare to eat them in order to not ruin his image of an expert that he had created by pretending to be a beep. As a replacement, he tasted the wine that the Dragon King took out. He felt that the wine was very light, but the taste was not bad. At least, it was much better than the rye wine that he drank in the other world. You don't have to use such formulaic words. I'm more casual. Putting down the wine cup, Su Xinxing responded to the Lishui Dragon King. If possible, I would like to relax, but the problem is that I can't. The Dragon King sighed. Because the difference in strength is too big, I subconsciously have a sense of reverence. This can't be helped. Just like the exalted immortal, Cough Brother, when facing the legendary torch dragon who controls the sun and the moon, you can't be as calm as when facing an ordinary person, right? Su Xinxing thought. Is it? Then, he shook his head in amusement and threw this thought out of his mind. He thought to himself, I've definitely been infected by Jasmine. Probably sensing that Su Xinxing was thinking about something related to her, Jasmine, who was beside him, tilted her head and revealed a puzzled expression. What was interesting was that Jasmine had weirdly turned herself into a round ball. She probably wanted to express that she had drunk too much water. However, Su Xinxing knew that the water was not enough to moisten the little girl's throat. If she drank to her heart's content, it would not be a problem, even if she drank all the liquid water on earth. At this time, Emoli had finished the food in front of him and was looking at Su Xinxing eagerly. The latter felt that he could not eat the thing that looked like seafood anyway, so he just gave it to Emoli. Thus, the little girl happily took the plate of crustaceans and began to chew on it. So, what do you plan to do in the future? After looking away from Emoli, Su Xinxing felt that the Lishui Dragon King should not be interested in discussing whether the torch dragon should be steamed or braised, and how it tasted, so he changed the topic. What plans? I will continue to maintain the order of the river as the water god, just like before. Aoli sighed. In fact, gods like the earth god, the mountain god, and the river god are similar. They will be tied to the same place by their duties, until that place is merged with other places, or disappears for various reasons. Finally, they will be completely hidden in history. After hearing the Dragon King's words, Su Xinxing looked at Zhuo Xiangzhu, who had not spoken since the beginning. She smiled. My position as a god has been passed to Xiao Yi. After this, I plan to go to Shangjing. This answer was not out of Su Xinxing's expectations. He nodded slightly and made a look of understanding. What? Xiangzhu, are you going to Shangjing? On the other hand, the Dragon King's face turned pale with fright. He obviously did not expect such an answer. Isn't this obvious? Even Xiao Jingyi, who had lost her appetite after digging out the mysterious sticky substance from the crustacean's body, and had stopped eating like Su Xinxing, had an indifferent look on her face. There's no need to be so surprised, okay? What? Young mistress is going to Shangjing. The earth god lowly widened her eyes and said in disbelief. Hey, even you are coming. Xiao Jingyi's face immediately turned awkward. Su Xinxing could understand why the Dragon King was so surprised. After all, this guy was an honest dragon with a tough life. Until just now, he was probably still thinking that even if they could not become lovers, at least he could look at her from afar. Even if his rationality told him that Zhuo Xiangzhu would most likely follow in her lover's footsteps and leave this place, he would still hold on to some hope and not think about what was more likely to happen. When he thought about it this way, the Lishui Dragon King was quite pitiful. Then I want to go with young mistress. The earth god lowly reacted and immediately said, No way, Yi. You can't do that. Zhuo Xiangzhu smiled bitterly and rejected the earth god lowly. You are now the god guarding this land. The people on this land need you. You can't be so willful. Then I will pass on my position to someone else. Compared to becoming a god, I would rather be with young mistress. The earth god lowly said without hesitation. Zhuo Xiangzhu revealed a serious expression. The position of the earth god is not something that can be casually passed on. I have lived with you for hundreds of years, and only then did I confirm that your character and talent are qualified for this job. No, you can even do it better than me. Do you want me to feel uneasy even when I leave? Young mistress. The earth god lowly looked at Zhuo Xiangzhu with tears in her eyes. However, the latter was obviously the type of person who would not change her mind once she made up her mind. She only looked at the listless Lishui Dragon King and said, Aoli, after I leave, I will have to trouble you to take care of Yi. Yes, that's for sure. The Dragon King forced himself to be spirited and nodded in agreement. The following banquet became a little dull because of this incident. Su Xinxing was studying a new dish that was served by an attendant who looked like a kelp spirit. It looked like kelp soup, but Xiao Jingyi quietly came over. Old Su, I feel a little strange. He whispered. What's the matter? Su Xinxing suddenly lost interest in the kelp soup and asked in a low voice. What you did previously should have reversed the tragic ending, right? But why hasn't the screen cleared the game yet? Even if it's an Easter egg plot, isn't it a little too long? It seemed like when he came to the Dragon Palace, he probably thought that he could see the staff list. At this time, Emoli, who had returned to his original state, saw the two of them sneaking together and could not help but feel playful. He ran over and sat on Su Xinxing's lap. His little head also moved in between the two of them. There is only one truth. Su Xinxing took advantage of the situation and placed his chin on the little girl's head. He continued to whisper, That is, there may be more than one sad memory that the earth god lowly cares about. There may be others. Xiao Jingyi thought for a while and revealed an expression of sudden realization. Are you talking about the story between Zhuo Xiangzhu and that scholar? Su Xinxing nodded. His action caused Emoli, who was in his arms, to twist his body uncomfortably. Thinking about it carefully, their original goal was the story that Qin Xingyan brought back. However, halfway through, their attention was attracted by the matter of the Dragon King, so they forgot about it. If that story was true, then Zhuo Xiangzhu gave up his 1,000 years of hard work and went to Shangjing alone. He was afraid that the only thing he got was the bad news that the scholar had a new lover. In this case, if we want to reverse the bad ending, do we also have to go to Shangjing? Xiao Jingyi, who originally thought that everything was fine, could not help but frown and ask. It's hard to say. After all, if this is a dream, the main character is still in Shangjing. I don't think that leaving the main character aside will solve the problem. Su Xinxing shook his head. Perhaps this action made Emoli a little itchy, so the little girl hit Su Xinxing's chin hard with her head. Only a dong sound was heard. Nothing happened to Su Xinxing, but Emoli covered his head and trembled on the table, with a painful look on his face. When the three of them gathered together, it was naturally impossible not to attract the attention of others. In addition, the movement just now was too big. Even the Lishui Dragon King, who had this king, is very sad. No one needs to care about this king. Look, from the beginning, could not help but cast a sidelong glance. Could it be that the dishes of the Dragon Palace are not to your taste? He asked Su Xinxing with some apprehension. It's nothing, it's all right. Su Xinxing replied with a dry laugh. Although there were indeed some dishes that gave people a strange feeling. In fact, most of the dishes were quite normal, and the taste was also very good. That's good. This king specially instructed the chef to prepare carefully this time. Although it was sudden and some rare ingredients could not be obtained in a short period of time, the ingredients that were brought up now are also very precious. For example, this pot of kelp soup. This black lump of kelp soup really is kelp soup. Whose family's kelp looks like this? Speaking of which, it even wriggled a little just now. This thing is not cooked at all. Or rather, why can the kelp wriggle like a leech? Su Xinxing immediately ridiculed in his heart. It's made from kelp that is full of spiritual energy, near Penglai Immortal Mountain. Because the immortals who grow kelp only do it occasionally when they're not cultivating. The output has always been small. The Lishui Dragon King eagerly recommended the pot of strange-looking kelp soup. And it's said that it has the function of growing hair, nourishing hair, and is favored by many cultivators who stay up late to cultivate. Really, breast implants. I'm not at the age where I have to worry about my hair. Ha ha ha, Su Xinxing said with a fake smile. I feel that the way you address this king is a bit strange. Is this king's misconception? The Lishui Dragon King scratched his head. It's your misconception, breast implants. Su Xinxing said resolutely. Then he sat upright, picked up the bowl of mysterious black substance, and drank it in one gulp. Xiao Jingyi at the side seemed like he wanted to say something, but considering his own safety, he wisely chose to keep quiet in the end. After 3 rounds of wine and 5 dishes, the banquet was nearing its end. Brother, no matter what, my Lishui clan is indebted to your help this time, the Lishui Dragon King said with a bitter smile. It seemed like he remembered the disheartened feeling he had when he planned to commit suicide by borrowing the hands of Zhuo Xiangzhu. This king doesn't have anything too good as a reward. Just tell me what you want. Su Xinxing was a bit hesitant. Should he ask for 50 to 60 pounds of kelp from the other party? But what if this was just a dream, and he couldn't bring it back? I want that. Emoli didn't hesitate to point with his chubby little finger. Su Xinxing looked in the direction he pointed, but what he saw was the Lishui Dragon King's stunned face. This made Su Xinxing a bit embarrassed, thinking, could it be that Emoli wants this dragon's head? That's a bit tricky. I'm currently in the good faction. Perhaps he felt that Su Xinxing was thinking about how to kill and set fire. So Xiao Jingyi, who was in the good faction, coughed dryly. Old Su, I think Emoli might be talking about the jewel on the breast implant crown. Hearing him say this, Su Xinxing realized that there was indeed a very beautiful jewel on the Lishui Dragon King's crown. Oh, this one. Aoli seemed to be relieved. He took off his crown and threw the jewel to the little girl. I took this from my father's palace. Other than being beautiful, it doesn't have any other use. If you like it, I'll give it to you. Oh. Emoli raised the jewel with an expressionless face. Tenoshi. This made Su Xinxing behind him reveal a slight smile. Since he had accepted the other party's gift, it seemed that this time he had to bring the other party a happy ending. But from the point that this guy was already NTR, a happy ending would do, right? Chapter 383. After the flood incident, Su Xinxing and the others returned to the Temple of the Earth. Although the Lishui Dragon King said that it was fine even if they stayed in the Dragon Palace, Su Xinxing reluctantly refused in consideration of the purpose of their trip. Of course, whether it was the warm and hospitable Dragon King, or the kelp soup that he was reluctant to part with was unknown. After bidding farewell to Zhuo Xiangzhu on the official road from Jiangjin to Shangjing, Su Xinxing returned to his idle state. I say, is this really okay? Xiao Jingyi paced back and forth in the living room of the Temple of the Earth. When Su Xinxing was about to get dizzy, he asked with an uneasy expression, if we don't go to Shangjing with the former Earth God, if something happens over there, we won't be able to do anything from here. If you're so worried, you can go to Shangjing yourself. As for the travel expenses, you can just ask breast implants for reimbursement. I think he'll be very happy." Su Shenxing was focused on the work at hand and answered absent-mindedly. "Then what if I accidentally mess things up?" Xiao Jingyi seemed to be a little tempted. After all, not everyone had the opportunity to see the ancient capital of the Celestial Empire, but immediately asked anxiously, "Kill yourself to atone for your sins?" "Hey, the punishment is so heavy." Xiao Jingyi immediately gave up and sat down on the armchair. He looked at the things in Su Shenxing's hands and asked curiously, "By the way, what have you been doing since just now? Didn't Emily ask for a gem from breast implants before? This girl didn't have a place to put it, so I simply asked breast implants for some silver. I'm preparing to make a necklace purely by hand." Su Shenxing took the time to give Xiao Jingyi a thumbs up. "I'm a friend who's good at handwork. Is there something wrong with my view of the world? Why do I feel like there's a difference between handmade crafting and your actions, which are like playing with clay?" Xiao Jingyi complained with an embarrassed expression. "That's true." Su Shenxing threw the half-finished product on the table with a pained expression. "Damn, it's too difficult to make every link of the chain exactly the same. So, the level of your behavior is no different from hand-knitting instant noodles." Xiao Jingyi picked up the half-finished product and found that the half-finished silver necklace was actually not much different from the modern mass-produced ones. He couldn't help but be amazed and feel that Su Shenxing was really too boring. Of course Emily, who was eating watermelon while watching Su Shenxing cook, was even more bored. Aren't instant noodles handmade?" Su Shenxing was shocked. "Cough, I saw that the atmosphere was too boring, so I was just joking. Don't look at me with that." This alien really exposed a flaw expression. Su Shenxing coughed and explained awkwardly. "And don't look at me with pity." While the two big men were idly performing crosstalk in the living room, a small bell in the corner of the living room suddenly rang. Su Shenxing and Xiao Jingyi couldn't help but look at each other. After living here for so many days, they naturally knew that this thing was the secret signal used by the former Earth God to meet her lover. But the problem was, whether it was the former Earth God girl or her lover, shouldn't they both be in Shangjing at this time? Without waiting for them to take any action, the Earth God Loli, who had been depressed since Zhuo Xiangzhu left, stumbled out of the inner room with an excited expression on her face. "It must be the eldest miss. I knew that the eldest miss wouldn't really leave me alone." Su Shenxing and Xiao Jingyi looked at each other. "What do you think?" Xiao Jingyi asked in a low voice. "I'm afraid that the person who came is not the former Earth God." Su Shenxing frowned and guessed. The former Earth God should be the type who was very opinionated and stood by her words. Since she decided to go to Shangjing alone, it was impossible for her to give up halfway and suddenly run back. No matter what, since the plot had happened, Su Shenxing and Xiao Jingyi naturally couldn't turn a blind eye to it. Thus the two of them, along with Emily, followed her out. The crack in the sky was still there, which made the sky look a bit magical. Although this scene attracted the attention of the world at first, humans' ability to adapt was very strong. After the crack had been hanging in the sky for a long time without anything happening, most people's curiosity had passed, and they began to get used to it. Their attention naturally shifted to other places. For example, occasionally seeing a lunar eclipse would be very impressive, but if a lunar eclipse happened every day 365 days in a year, people would treat it as a normal phenomenon and wouldn't pay attention to it. "Why is it you?" From afar, Su Shenxing could hear the desperate cries of the Earth God Loli coming from the Earth God Temple. After they entered the Earth God Temple, the situation inside was as expected. The person who rang the bell was the scholar. "Greetings, Miss Uni. Is Miss Xiangzhu here?" The scholar didn't feel uncomfortable with the Earth God Loli's disgust, and only smiled faintly as he asked her. "Miss Uni isn't at home, and won't appear for a long time. You should give up." The Earth God Loli ruthlessly refused without hesitation. The scholar seemed to have gotten used to the other party's harsh words, and only revealed a bitter smile. "Don't make trouble. This time, I came to find Miss Xiangzhu for a proper matter." "What matter? Just tell her directly." The Earth God Loli still didn't give him any face. The scholar seemed to want to say something, but at this moment, someone who was dressed as an aide ran in and said in the scholar's ear, "Sir, the prefectural magistrate and the rest have all arrived. If you don't go, I'm afraid it will be rude. Once you become enemies with these local officials, the mission that the emperor gave us will be somewhat troublesome." At this moment, Su Xinxing realized that the scholar was wearing an official's robe. Furthermore, although Su Xinxing wasn't sure how official's robe was categorized, he felt that the scholar's rank wasn't low. It seemed that this fellow had some tricks up his sleeve. Not long after arriving in Tianjing, he became a high-ranking official and returned home in glory. In that case, could it be that he had coincidentally missed the previous Earth God Loli? Perhaps he felt that he wouldn't be able to see Zhuo Xiangzhu if he continued to stay here today. Thus, the scholar cupped his fists towards Su Xinxing with some regret. "If there's a chance, please tell Xiangzhu that I've returned. Thank you very much." After saying that, he planned to leave. Wait a moment. At this moment, the Earth God Loli suddenly called out to him. "Why did you return to Jiangjin this time?" From the girl's conflicted expression, Su Xinxing could feel that the girl's heart was in a dilemma. If this scholar said that he had specially returned to pick up Zhuo Xiangzhu, the Earth God Loli would probably tell him about Zhuo Xiangzhu's whereabouts. "Sir, you've received an imperial edict to return to do a great deed that will benefit the country and the people." Before the scholar could speak, the aide beside him replied somewhat arrogantly, "Actually, it's not a big deal." The scholar only smiled before continuing to explain, "I just want to dig up the Li River and change its course." Chapter 384. How preposterous! I'm going to drown those bastard mortals. After knowing that his hometown might have been dug up, the Lishui Dragon King could not help but be enraged. This scene reminded Su Xinxing that this fellow was a genuine river god, and river gods were actually quite ferocious. Speaking of which, if Lishui really changed its course, would you still be the river god of Lishui? Xiao Jingyi asked curiously. Of course, it's just a change of course, it's gone. The Dragon King spread out his hands and answered. Then is there a need for you to be angry with these mortals? Because I hate them, especially the one who led them. I'm going to kill him. The Dragon King answered straightforwardly. Good, that's how a real man should be. Go, go, go. You can forget about getting the previous Earth God of Jiangjin to see you in the future. Hence, Su Xinxing also clapped his hands with an "I support you" spiritually look, just short of waving flags and shouting battle cries for the other party. Oh, Mo Li, who was eating vegetarian fried pancakes, also clapped his hands expressionlessly, Sui Guoyi. Immediately, the Dragon King's murderous look, which resembled the protagonist of a Chidian web novel, dissipated. He sprawled on the table, looking like I'm pretty much a crippled dragon. He wanted to cry but had no tears. Then what should I do? Just observe in secret first. Su Xinxing suggested indifferently. I think you don't have to be too anxious. This is not a big deal. I don't believe that a dignified dragon king like you will be killed by a few humans. You can't say that. The Lishui Dragon King slammed the table, smashing the gold-threaded Jinnan wood table in the Earth God's temple. The key is my reputation as a river god. Let me give you an example. If a few termites behave atrociously in your house, and tell you that this house can't be used because it affects the safety of the termites, we'll build a pigsty for you next to the latrine. You can move in there. I don't believe that you'll be willing to accept this and run to live in a pigsty. But they didn't dig it next to the latrine for you. Su Xinxing looked at the carelessness on the table with some heartache, wondering if he should take a few pieces of wood back when he left. That's not the problem. At this moment, the Dragon King despaired of Su Xinxing's ability to understand him, so he decided to change the topic. Where's that little girl? The Dragon King was naturally referring to the current owner of the Earth Temple, the Earth God Loli. She seems to be trying her best to complete the mission of the FFF group. Break up the adulterous couple. So, say, now that Miss isn't in Jiangjin, it's useless no matter how many times you ask. The Earth God Loli made a cross with her hands and said impatiently, Why won't you give up? Uni, stop fooling around. Xiangzhu said that she would never leave Jiangjin. The scholar obviously didn't believe the earth god Loli's words. What do you want me to say for you to believe me? The earth god Loli was a little tired of his stubbornness. Then I'll ask you a question first. Hearing this, the scholar's face turned serious and asked, when I left Jiangjin for Shangjing, Xiangzhu's body didn't seem to be well. Could it be that she was sick, and that's why she didn't come out to see me? The earth god Loli couldn't help but be stunned. Zhuo Xiangzhu had indeed been entangled by a weak divine punishment during that period of time, causing her spirit to weaken. However, that weakening was very subtle and difficult to detect. Even Su Xinxing only noticed it when he sensed that Zhuo Xiangzhu's spirit had weakened. Furthermore, every time she met with the scholar, she would be 120% alert. Logically speaking, the scholar shouldn't have been able to detect it. However, if she thought about it from another perspective, she could understand how much importance the scholar placed on Zhuo Xiangzhu's situation. That was why he was able to detect such a subtle thing. Seeing that the earth god Loli didn't say anything, the scholar couldn't help but become anxious. Uni, why aren't you saying anything? Could it be? There's no could it be. Miss is doing very well. The earth god Loli let out a long sigh. She had a dream yesterday again. She couldn't remember the contents of the dream clearly, but one thing was very clear. If she continued to be with the scholar, the end result would be very sad. She wouldn't be able to bear it, and might even regret it for thousands of years. Since that was the case, she might as well change it from here on. Doing some small things definitely wouldn't be able to completely change the sad ending. In the previous incident with the Dragon King, she had consciously worked hard in some small areas. She wanted to use the butterfly or something. In short, she relied on the accumulation of small differences and finally changed the ending. However, in the end, if it wasn't for that Mr. Diner, the final result would probably not have changed at all. Therefore, if she wanted to change it this time, she had to use a more impactful method. Scholar, Miss is actually the earth god. The scholar looked puzzled. Obviously, he couldn't understand the meaning behind the earth god Loli's words. Is that so? Compared to words, it's easier for people to understand the current situation with facts. Thus, the earth god Loli clapped her hands gently, unprepared. The scholar felt that there was nothing under his feet, and his whole body fell directly into the big pit under his feet. However, he couldn't see the bottom of the big pit, so he kept repeating the only action of falling. This is? The scholar tried his best to move his limbs. His wide robe was pulled up by the air current, making him look a little funny. However, as the person involved, he couldn't laugh at all. Then, countless white bubbles appeared around him. Those bubbles slowed down his falling speed. After a while, the bubbles suddenly disappeared. With a splash, he felt that his whole body had fallen into the water. However, the water around him was so heavy and sticky, like mud or swamp. He couldn't even struggle. In the next moment, the bottomless pit, the white bubbles, and the muddy swamp all disappeared. The scholar found himself kneeling on the floor of the earth god temple. The snow-white robe that he had specially changed into today was covered with wet mud. It made him understand that everything he had just experienced was not an illusion. Do you understand now? I'm not joking with you. Miss is the earth god, and I'm her attendant. As for you, you're just a mortal. Only then did the earth god Loli return to her cold and cheerless appearance. She said to the dazed scholar, "If you understand, don't continue to pester Mississippi." Chapter 385. After coughing out the muddy water that choked his windpipe, the scholar raised his head and looked at the earth god Loli in disbelief. Xiangzhu she is an immortal? Yes, that's right. The girl crossed her arms and said coldly, "There is a difference between immortals and mortals. It's best if you don't continue to approach Mississippi." I refuse. The scholar wiped the corner of his mouth and replied without hesitation. I originally thought that Xiangzhu was avoiding me because I obtained scholarly honors. She has some grudges against me. He paused for a moment and did not say inferiority in the end. Instead, he changed it to a more neutral word. That's why I wanted to use sincerity to move her. But since that's not the case, I'm relieved. But you're not worthy of her. The earth god Loli said sternly. Isn't that even better? It's because I don't have the qualifications to stand side by side with Xiangzhu that this unwillingness turned into motivation for me to continue working hard. One day, I'll definitely become a man who won't be inferior to Xiangzhu even if I stand beside her. Not knowing if he saw through the girl's clumsy acting, the scholar smiled faintly. I'm very competitive and narrow-minded. Even if this will make Miss suffer a fate worse than death, you still want to do it. Facing the scholar who had such firm beliefs, the earth god Loli finally lost control of her emotions and told him the things that she did not intend to tell him. Uni, what do you mean by this? As expected, after hearing this sentence, the scholar's face showed a puzzled expression. Moreover, because this matter was related to Zhuo Xiangzhu, he seemed to want to get to the bottom of it. Since she had already said it, the earth god Loli did not intend to continue hiding it. Didn't I already say that there is a difference between immortals and mortals? The difference between you and Miss is not your identity, but the tragedy of being unable to be together. The girl tried her best to control her emotions and continued to speak coldly. This isn't something that people made up to scare you. Although the heavenly law itself won't do anything to a mortal like you, as the earth god of Jiangjin, eldest Miss will continue to be tortured by the heavenly punishment. Didn't you also feel that her body was a little unwell before? That's because the effects of Sky's punishment are starting to show. If you continue to be stubborn, young Miss she. At this point, earth god Loli choked with sobs and couldn't continue. Sob, why is young mistress so stubborn? On the other hand, the scholar's face revealed a blank expression, as if he didn't know what to do. He looked absent-minded as he swayed and sat down on the futon. His entire person looked incomparably confused. No matter how unwilling he was to accept this fact, what he had just experienced was definitely not fake. Moreover, he had some understanding of Zhuo Xiangzhu's character. He knew that the girl would not joke about Zhuo Xiangzhu's safety. After a long while, he looked as if he had aged several decades in an instant, and his entire person looked incomparably dispirited. The youth's back that was originally as straight as a ruler, due to his success, had unknowingly bent down. Earth god Loli could even vaguely see a few more strands of silver in his hair bun. If from now on Xiangzhu and I. His face was haggard, and when he said this, his entire person bent down in pain as he gasped for air. Finally, he held his breath until his eyes were bloodshot. Only then did he continue to say, if I cut off all ties with Xiangzhu, can she recover? Definitely. Earth god Loli hurriedly nodded. If that's the case. The scholar tore a piece of cloth from the part of his robe that was still intact and clean. Then he bit his index finger and wrote on it. After a moment, a bloody letter was thrown into earth god Loli's arms. You go and present this to Xiangzhu, young Miss Zhuo. From now on, I have nothing to do with her. Seeing his miserable appearance, even earth god Loli, who usually hated him, could not bear to see him like this. She opened her mouth and said, as compensation, I can fulfill one of your wishes. Of course, it cannot exceed the scope of my abilities. If a person's heart is gouged out, what's the use of having a wish? The scholar stood up from the ground with difficulty. His body was bent, and he no longer paid any attention to earth god Loli. Just like that, he slowly left the earth god temple. Sir, you look so haggard. Did you catch a cold? The advisor that the scholar had recruited in Shangjing was trying to curry favor with him. I feel that the wind on the river is strong. I can be the supervisor. Sir, it's better for you to return to your residence to rest. Ever since he left the earth god temple, there were already a few people who asked him similar questions. Even when the scholar looked in the mirror, he felt that his face had become so unfamiliar that he did not recognize it. However, he did not have the slightest intention of changing this. It's fine. I'll just watch from here. The change of the Li River's course is a major matter that even the emperor is concerned about. There cannot be any mistakes. Thus, the scholar waved his hand and rejected his advisor's suggestion to go back and rest. Speaking of the management of the Li River, it was indeed a matter of great importance to the current imperial court. Originally, according to the prophecy of the imperial astronomer, the Ministry of Works was already prepared for the flooding of the Li River, and the deaths of countless people. However, after 10 days of heavy rain, the water level still did not break through the simple dam that could not be any more simple and crude. However, they could not just leave it be. Thus, the emperor ordered the Ministry of Works to send officials to manage the Li River. As a result, the officials of the Ministry of Works could not help but look at each other. One had to know that if he was stripped of his official hat, his life would not be in danger. But this Li River, what if the dam could not bear the burden when they ran to the riverside, and all the water was released with a splash? Then wouldn't his body, which was not worth 10,000 gold, be fed to the fishes and shrimps in the river like those bumpkins? Even if they could barely survive, they would probably be labeled as incompetent in management by their political opponents. They would not be able to return to the imperial court in Shangjing in this lifetime. Thus, a group of people tried to shirk the responsibility. In the end, the scholar, who was homesick, stood up and took on this thankless task. It was also because of this that the emperor was very happy. He made an exception and gave the scholar the title of a 5th-rank assistant director in the Ministry of Water, specializing in water matters. Now that things had come to this, even though he knew that the person he was deeply concerned about wasn't someone he could touch, at the very least, it didn't matter if he had to sacrifice a little bit of his strength to protect the land of Jiangjin. Chapter 386. Speaking of which, after devoting himself to his work, the scholar recalled some things that he had forgotten. When he was about to set off, someone from the imperial astronomer came looking for him and told him that there might be an evil dragon in the Li River. They also gave him a stack of talismans that could be used to prevent the evil dragon from destroying the construction site. Originally, he had studied the books of the saints since he was a child. He did not believe in ghosts or gods, nor did he believe in the existence of dragons. He did not expect that after returning to Jiangjin for a few days, the worldview that he had built over the past 10 years would be completely overturned by the earth god Lolita. Since the earth god existed, would dragons also exist? When he thought of the dragon's ability in myths and legends, the scholar could not help but frown. Thus he was a little afraid. He called his aide and asked him to bring the talismans that he had left in his residence. He planned to stick them on the construction site just in case. However, reality proved that he was a little slow. Not long after his aide left, a gust of wind began to blow on the originally calm river. What was even more illogical was that the wind was clearly blowing, but the clouds in the sky were gathering towards this side. The wind follows the tiger, and the clouds follow the dragon. The scholar standing on the loft by the river muttered to himself. At the same time, the clouds in the sky suddenly pressed down. The poem said that the black clouds were about to destroy the city. Although the clouds were not black, their momentum did not lose out at all. It was as if they wanted to crush him into minced meat. The scholar placed his hands behind his back, motionless as he faced the clouds pressing down on him. In the next moment, the clouds smashed onto his body. However, it was as if they had passed through fog. There was no feeling at all. It was just that his surroundings were a vast expanse of white. He could not see anything. A moment later, a voice came from in front of him. "Why didn't you dodge?" The scholar looked forward. Where there should have been a void, there was a handsome young man about the same age as him standing in the air, looking at him with bright eyes. "I have always been open and aboveboard. I have never done anything wrong. Why should I hide?" If it was 2 days ago, he would have been scared witless. However, his heart was dead. He was not even afraid of death. How could he be afraid of a dragon? Thus, he replied in a manner that was neither servile nor overbearing. "You sure have guts. Are you not afraid that the Lishui River god will punish you?" The handsome young man. "Alright, I guess you all already know that this guy is the Lishui Dragon King." The Dragon King couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. "I'm a subject of His Majesty. I listen to His Majesty and represent the imperial court. I'm saving the people. No matter what, it has nothing to do with the so-called gods." The scholar shook his head and said, "How dare you? Let's see if you still dare to say that in the future." The Lishui Dragon King laughed out loud. With a shake of his body, he turned into a 10,000 zhang long giant dragon. His body was so huge that it was barely visible in the clouds. Even the scholar could not see his full appearance. However, just his bloody mouth alone was enough to swallow the entire pavilion by the river. In the face of this monster that was far beyond his imagination, the scholar found that his heart had never been so calm before. This made him have the misconception that it might be better for him to be eaten here. At least he did not have to continue to feel uncomfortable. Realizing that he could not scare the other party, the Lishui Dragon King could only turn back into his human form. Although it was not that immortals could not kill mortals. Firstly, Aoli himself was not the bloodthirsty type. Furthermore, after being influenced by Zhuxiangzhu for a long time, he would not harm the lives of humans. Occasionally, when someone fell into the water, he would instruct the aquatic creatures to push the person back to the shore. This gave rise to many legends of water monkeys in Jiangjin. Secondly, this guy's identity was too sensitive. If he ate him in one bite, it would give others the feeling that he killed him out of love. This would make the proud Dragon King very unhappy. Therefore, from the beginning, Aoli did not intend to kill this guy. He only wanted to embarrass him. It seems that I have underestimated your guts. It seems that I have also overestimated your guts. The scholar did not know why he still wanted to provoke the other party, but he felt like a fishbone was stuck in his throat, causing him to blurt out these words without thinking. Obviously, his words had ignited the Dragon King's anger. The Dragon King, who was only here to show off, was truly enraged. A mere mortal actually dares to say such words. I don't know who gave you the guts. He sneered. All right, I will give you 1 day to evacuate all the workers at the construction site. Otherwise, when I flood the construction site tomorrow, don't say that I have no regard for human lives. The scholar stared at the Dragon King in silence. Oh right, don't think that the talismans in your residence can protect their safety. Perhaps the talismans made by you human sorcerers might be of some use to some minor immortals, but they are absolutely useless to me. If you don't believe me, you can bet with the tens of thousands of workers who are serving the corvée. The Dragon King continued. This caused a slight change in the scholar's expression. However, it was not an expression of fear or panic that the Dragon King wanted to see. Instead, it was closer to an expression of determination. Of course, it was not a face like _. It seemed that his goal was not going to be achieved. Thus, the Dragon King snorted coldly and disappeared into the clouds. After a while, the scholar's aide carried a cloth bag filled with talismans and rushed to the attic. Sir, do you want me to stick these things on? He asked the scholar curiously. No need, prepare a horse for me. The scholar shook his head. Where are you going, sir? The Temple of the Earth. After leaving the advisor who was lamenting because his master had entered and exited the Earth Temple so many times that he seemed to have the tendency to ask about ghosts and gods, the scholar once again walked into the Earth Temple that he thought he would never come back to again. Then, he rang the bell that he had almost thrown away, because he was afraid that he would think of her. Not long after, the Earth God Loli appeared in front of him. Because she seemed to have revealed her identity to him, there was no need for taboos. This time, the Earth God Loli did not walk in from the back door of the Temple of the Earth, but grew out of the ground like a mushroom. This made the scholar a little surprised. What's the matter? The Earth God Loli stared at the scholar suspiciously. Are you regretting it? I want to ask if what you said before about fulfilling a wish for me is still true. The scholar went straight to the point and asked. I said to fulfill a wish that is within my power. After all, even if I am the Earth God, I am not omnipotent. The Earth God Loli explained. There was once a guy called Confucius who received a promise from the Earth God. However, his wish was for world peace. When he was told that it could not be fulfilled, he cried very sadly. Don't cry, Master Confucius. Your lofty image in my heart is about to collapse. Note, even if there was no such saying in ancient times, the scholar felt that such words were about to come out from his heart. Thus, he tried hard to suppress his desire to complain and said seriously, Don't worry, I still have some sense of propriety. However, before that, I want to ask, which one is more powerful, the river god or the earth god? Chapter 387. The torrential rain that had stopped started to fall again. Under the scholar's instructions, the commoners had all rushed to take shelter from the rain, or rather, to take refuge. On the shore of the Lishui River, the scholar and the earth god Loli stood side by side. Opposite them was the Lishui dragon king, Aoli, who was standing on the waves and staring at them. Xiaoyi, no Zhuiyuni, do you really want to be enemies with me? Aoli's expression seemed to be somewhat distressed. After all, before Zhuo Xiangzhu left, he had specially instructed him to take good care of Zhuiyuni on his behalf. However, he did not expect that not long after, the situation would greatly change because of a human scholar. Zhuiyuni would stand opposite him and become his enemy. If not for the fact that the Dragon King had just experienced a greater blow, falling out of love, just this alone was enough to make him start to doubt his dragon life. The earth god Loli did not reply. She knew that if she mentioned the eldest miss, she would be able to convince Aoli and make the Dragon King compromise. However, inviting the eldest miss to return and become the earth god of Jiangjin was her own wishful thinking. She did not want to involve others in her whimsical plans. She would most likely be punished by the heavens if she did so. If Aoli did not know and fought with her, it could be considered as fulfilling his duty as the Lishui Dragon King. At least, he would not be punished for violating the heavenly laws. Is that so? That expression is the same as Xiangzhu's. The Lishui Dragon King Aoli laughed self-deprecatingly and assumed a stance. Both of you are filled with determination. No wonder she would choose you to inherit her mantle. The earth god Loli also took a deep breath and blocked the scholar behind her. She summoned the earth god's true spirit and planned to go all out. To be honest, even Zhuo Xiangzhu was not Aoli's opponent, not to mention a little girl who had just become the earth god for a few days. However, this battle was different from the previous one. This was not a battle of life and death. As long as she could defeat the Dragon King, it would be her victory. The girl secretly encouraged herself in her heart. What did I do wrong? Why do both of you want to make things difficult for me? The Lishui Dragon King roared in grief and indignation. He transformed into his true dragon form and pounced towards the girl and the scholar. I'm the one in the wrong, but I can't go back or stop. The earth god Loli raised her right hand, and a huge fist bulged from the ground. Aoli's ferocious momentum and caused the silvery white dragon's body to slanted to graze by them, and by a corner. The Dragon King of the White's body was by Aoli's the White's true Dragon King. However, Aoli only struggled slightly, and the small mountain of rocks collapsed easily. Aoli also took the opportunity to soar into the air. By the lair, by the LTO the point. To the lore. The earth god Loli clasped her hands together, and countless rocks and soil rose from the ground, wrapping around the city tower to form a huge and sturdy fortress. Humph! Aoli spat out a bright red dragon pearl. The dragon pearl was glowing with colorful light. Wind and thunder intertwined, and one could faintly hear the roar of raging waves coming from it. He controlled the dragon ball and smashed it on the fortress. The fortress, which was incomparably sturdy in this era, immediately collapsed as if it had been hit by a missile. More than half of the originally magnificent tower had also collapsed. One could vaguely see that the earth god Loli was in the ruins. She summoned a few pieces of rock and soil to block the roof beam when it collapsed. The scholar stood behind the earth god Loli. Although he was dazzled by the battle between the two, due to his lack of knowledge, the calmness he felt after disregarding life and death did not disappear. Thus, he was only surprised and not frightened. Let's end this farce quickly. The Dragon King let out a low roar, and two waterspouts appeared on the surface of the Lishui River. They intertwined and fused together, turning into a gigantic tornado that reached up to the sky. It swept toward the earth god Loli and the others. One hit is enough. As long as it hits. The little girl had already gathered all her power on her earth god spirit. The next moment, the earth god spirit turned into a spear and shot towards the Dragon King. The Dragon King did not dodge. The divine spear passed through his body without any hindrance. However, it was as if it had passed through a mirage. It did not affect him at all. Oh no! The earth god Loli suddenly realized that something was wrong. However, before the girl could finish speaking, a black shadow had already rushed out of the tornado. A single hand turned into a huge dragon claw and slashed down. The target of the Dragon King's attack was not the Earth God Loli, but the scholar behind her. In the Dragon King's opinion, since things had turned out this way, it would be too fake to be tangled up in trivial matters. He might as well get rid of the cause of all this. The Earth God Loli wanted to stop him, but it was too late. The Dragon King had thought that he would see fear and panic in the scholar's eyes, or perhaps a reluctance to part with his life. But to his disappointment, there was only calmness in the scholar's eyes, and a trace of relief. This made Aoli hesitate to kill the scholar for a moment. However, things happened in a flash. Even if he regretted it, it would not change. The mighty dragon claw had already slashed straight at the scholar's head. At this moment, a hand blocked the Dragon King's claw attack. Not only that, the Dragon King even felt that the claw he had hit on the back of the scholar's hand was broken. From time to time, he would feel a piercing pain. The frightened Earth God Loli, the scholar who had survived the disaster, and the Dragon King all followed the hand and looked at its owner. "It's not good to fight." Su Shenxing, who had appeared out of nowhere, said seriously. "Brother, move aside. This time, I will definitely cripple this mortal who sows discord all day long." The Dragon King, who had heaved a sigh of relief, continued to speak fiercely. However, the murderous intent in his eyes was no longer there. "Before that, I think we should listen to what the culprit Miss Loli has to say." Su Shenxing also knew that the Dragon King seemed to be a stubborn tsundere, so he pushed the topic to the Earth God Loli. After a few minutes of silence, the latter told them her plan. After hearing her words, the Dragon King and the scholar fell silent. "Then according to your purpose, there was no need to protect the scholar just now, was there? As long as he died, the former Earth God Loli would naturally have no reason to persist. You could achieve your plan without even using blood. Why did you spend so much effort to protect him?" Su Shenxing asked. The girl's eyes were full of confusion. Finally, she shook her head and said, "I don't know." "No, it's precisely because you know that you did such a self-contradictory action." Su Shenxing interrupted her without hesitation. In fact, although the girl herself was not clear, this plot had already happened 3 times in the eyes of Su Shenxing and the others. This was already the 4th time. Yes, Su Shenxing and the others had failed previously. In the first round, they had no idea that this girl was planning such a thing. By the time they arrived, the scholar had already been killed by the Dragon King. After returning from Shangjing to Jiangjin, Zhuoxiangzhu, who had learned of this matter, took advantage of the Earth God Loli's unpreparedness to directly usurp the Earth God Loli's true spirit and take revenge on the Dragon King. After the Earth God Loli succeeded in prolonging her life with the help of Su Shenxing and Mo Li, when they arrived at the battlefield, the former Earth God Loli had already killed the Dragon King and then committed suicide in front of them. In the grief and despair of the Earth Goddess Loli, the world was reset. Fortunately, because Su Shenxing changed the first sad ending, the reset point was the time when the former Earth Goddess Loli gave the position of God to the Earth Goddess Loli and went to the capital. In the second round, after learning of the Earth God Loli's plan in the first round, Su Shenxing and Xiaojingyi split up. After Su Shenxing persuaded physically the Earth God Loli and the Dragon King, Xiaojingyi also brought Zhuoxiangzhu back. Therefore, after the scholar knew the secret, he gave up on changing the route of the Lishui River and returned directly to Shangjing with his beloved wife to report to the emperor. As a result, the former was beaten to death by the furious emperor. In a rage, Zhuoxiangzhu broke into the palace and fought with the imperial astronomer for a day and a night. In the end, his spiritual power was exhausted, and he was killed by thousands of arrows piercing his heart. In the third round, Su Shenxing first resolved the misunderstanding between the people as quickly as possible. Then he overthrew the emperor alone, and overthrew the imperial court of this era. When he was about to play a first-person barbaric game, to see if he could beat the Western barbarians and conquer the world, Zhuoxiangzhu and the Dragon King died because of God's punishment, and the scholar also died because of love. "What do you mean?" the Earth God Loli asked at a loss. "Because you subconsciously know that if this continues, it will cause irreversible consequences, so you subconsciously protect the scholar. Su Shenxing sighed. In fact, there is no need to argue. Brother Dragon, you don't actually mind changing the route of the Lishui River, right? As long as the Lishui River is not merged with other water systems or disappears, you will always be the river god of the Lishui River. The reason why you stopped the scholar from changing the route is because you don't want the Lishui River to leave Jiangjin. Am I right? Humph. The Lishui Dragon King, who was speechless, could only snort softly, not knowing whether it was a tacit agreement or not. Scholar, what you want to do is only to control the flood of the Lishui River. Although the Ministry of Works Water Department has a rough plan, it shouldn't be a problem to adapt to local conditions, right? Thus Su Shenxing looked at the scholar again. Although that is the case, the scholar looked a little embarrassed. In that case, as long as we change the route at the lower reaches of Jiangjin, wouldn't it be fine? Su Shenxing didn't wait for the other party to finish speaking and said, but this way, we will need more manpower and material resources. Perhaps it is true for ordinary people, but don't forget, standing beside you are the gods of the earth and the great river. With the two of them, if you can't even change the route of the Lishui River, it would be better to find a piece of tofu and kill yourself. Therefore, the scholar also fell silent. But at this time, the Dragon King couldn't help but pour cold water on them. Although that is the case, if we help a mortal change the route of the Lishui River, I'm afraid that there will be divine punishment. Even Xiangzhu might be implicated by divine punishment. Regarding this, you don't have to worry. Su Shenxing smiled slightly and wiped the divine blood on his fist without batting an eyelid. Why do you think I came out so late to stop you? Xiaojingyi, who came here with him, had an expression of holy shit, how could this be? On his face. Emoli, on the other hand, ran to the river to catch fish again. What? The Dragon King obviously didn't understand Su Shenxing's meaning. I can guarantee that within 1,000 years, the heavenly court will not interfere with your affairs. Things like divine punishment, after 1,000 years, they won't be able to interfere even if they want to. What exactly did you do? The Dragon King's expression became even more suspicious. Nothing, I just communicated with the gods and Buddhas. Su Shenxing thought to himself. That's right, doesn't physical communication count as communication too? I didn't think that I would actually return to Jiangjin so soon. Because she heard that the scholar had returned to Jiangjin to manage the Lishui River, Zhuo Xiangzhu could only hurry back. I hope I can still make it in time. She understood Aoli and the scholar too well. The former was arrogant and looked down on mortals, while the latter was pedantic and inflexible. If he knew that someone wanted to dig up the Lishui River and change the river's course, the Dragon King Aoli would definitely be angry and find trouble with the other party. Although the scholar was only a mortal, he had a stomach full of loyalty and patriotism. In the past 3 weeks, he was kidnapped by Zhuo Xiangzhu to live in seclusion, and didn't know that Su Shenxing had overthrown the emperor. Even if he was afraid of the Dragon King, he would still face the difficulties and continue to manage the change of the river. Comparing a dragon and a mortal, the mortal would definitely be the unlucky one. If it was just a big loss, then it would be fine. She was afraid that Aoli's mood had been bad recently, and he would vent his anger on the scholar. Then the scholar would have a slim chance of surviving. It was because of this that she hurried back. However, after returning to Jiangjin, she realized that she seemed to have made a mistake. The scholar and the Dragon King were having a happy and harmonious time. Well, that was not right either. Although the atmosphere between the two of them was somewhat piercing and solemn, it definitely did not feel like they were mortal enemies. Furthermore, outside Jiangjin's county, tens of thousands of workers were digging up the river in an orderly manner. The degree of success was simply unbelievable. Miss Earth Goddess lowly threw herself into the young lady's arms. As the Earth Goddess of Jiangjin, she was naturally the first person to discover that the young lady had returned to this land. I have a lot of things to tell you. The young lady seemed to be surprised for a moment. However, she soon discovered that the young lady was completing her work as a Earth Goddess, and could not help but reveal a gentle smile. Alright, I also have some things to ask you. As she spoke, the former Earth Goddess girl asked the Earth Goddess lowly about her doubts. In short, it was the reason why Jiang Jin was so calm and tranquil. I'll have to start from those freeloaders who suddenly disappeared. The young lady nestled in the young lady's arms and revealed a blissful smile as she recounted the story that happened during this period of time. It's finally over. In Ying's apartment, Xiao Jingyi plopped down on the sofa. While he was enjoying the softness of the cheap sofa, he asked Su Xinxing, "But speaking of which, is the little Earth Goddess really all right?" "Yes. Didn't the former Earth Goddess say that her mental state has stabilized?" Su Xinxing, who was also a little tired, hugged the sleeping Mo Li and softly replied, "Speaking of which, is that world really a dream?" Xiao Jingyi clicked his tongue in admiration and said, "It's so real that it's unbelievable. However, judging from the fact that the world will reset following the little Earth Goddess's despair, it should be a dream," Xiao Jingyi explained without waiting for Su Xinxing's reply. "Old Su, what do you think?" "Who knows?" Su Xinxing yawned and gently stroked Mo Li's fair collarbone with his right hand. There was a bright gem embedded with a silver chain hanging there. "Let me clarify for the time being. Although I quite like Liuyo's books, I don't know him personally. The only time I had close contact with him was when I heard that he was arguing with someone in Dragon Sky. In the end, I seem to have been accidentally injured. The reason why I noted the source was because I was afraid that his classmate would say that he plagiarized. In addition, New Pocket Loli has already been destroyed along with the magazine that has only been published for 2 issues. Lastly, I would like to recommend another book friend's novel, The Two-Dimensional Journey of Fake Female Court Master." Chapter 388. It was a pale room. The area of the room was not large. Nearly 1/3 of the space was occupied by miscellaneous items. The remaining 1/3 was made up of a single bed, a somewhat worn-out computer, and a bookcase filled with a mess of things. In fact, it was more or less wrong to use the word pale to describe this room. It was more like all the original colors had disappeared, leaving only black, white, and gray. In such a room that seemed to have been abandoned by the entire world, the single bed had bright colors that did not fit in with this world. It was a little girl. Her long blonde hair was spread out on the white sheets. Although she had never taken care of her hair, it was smoother and shinier than the hair of the models in all the shampoo commercials. She was wearing an oversized white shirt that did not match her physique at all. However, because of her poor sleeping posture, one side of the shirt had slipped down, revealing the girl's round and delicate shoulders. However, she did not notice it at all. The air conditioner was carelessly draped over the girl's body. Her fair arms and thighs were exposed. That kind of whiteness was completely different from the paleness of this space. It was like the finest white jade, exuding a warm and gentle glow. Compared to the black game console that was carelessly thrown to the side, it presented a contrast of beauty. The girl's sleeping face was so soft and cute that people would not get bored if they stayed idle and admired it for a whole day. He wasn't sure if it was because of her sleeping posture, but the girl furrowed her delicate eyebrows in discomfort. She turned her body slightly, but because she was sleeping on the edge of the bed, this movement caused her to fall headfirst from the bed to the floor with a thud. Meow. Although it did not hurt, the impact still woke her up. She sat on the floor like a duck, opened her eyes in a daze, and reached out to wipe her face. However, because the sleeves of her shirt were much longer than her arms, her actions made her look more like a kitten washing its face. Coupled with her sleepy face, she gave off an adorable feeling. After stretching, the girl seemed to finally realize the strange phenomenon in her room. So she blinked and said softly, "So time began to flow." This sentence seemed to have some sort of magical power. Well, in fact, it was indeed so. After she said this, the grayish-white room, which seemed to have been filtered, immediately returned to its normal color. The girl yawned again. In order to ensure that her landlord wouldn't be sent back to reality no matter what he did, she had spent a lot of energy on the previous trip. She picked up the hair tie on the bedside table. After thinking for a while, she put the hair tie back and muttered softly, "I'll ask the landlord to tie my hair this morning." Then, The girl sat in front of the TV and turned on the computer with ease. The computer had just been bought not long ago. Considering the landlord's wallet, the girl had purposely bought it from a second-hand market. After logging into the online game White Embers that he had been working on recently, a male mage with the ID Moly Moly appeared on the screen. In this era where mobile games were more profitable than client-side games, game companies that dared to maintain client-side games were either rich, overconfident, or sentimental. She didn't know which company developed and operated White Embers. In short, this game was born just like that. As a typical MMORPG, although there was nothing special about it, it had a good reputation among the players. As a hardcore player, the girl's character was one of the frontline fighters in the guild she belonged to. Therefore, once she went online, the guild chat was flooded with messages. Want to fuck off Foo's Angel? Oh, Master Emoli is online. Hearing day in Magic City, Brother Emoli isn't here. Today the team leader and the others could only send a substitute for the first clear activity. It's already a failure. 8 sends a smuff. Speaking of which, yesterday the guild leader said that he wouldn't be able to clear the activity today. He was dressed as a girl and danced to Elysium Jodo. System notification. Player 8 sends a smuff has been muted by the guild leader of the Black Dove Alliance for 1 day. Undying Tree of Pit. F***CK. The guild leader is spying on the screen. Cursed Eagle. I haven't seen Master Emoli online for the whole day. If he doesn't want to miss the activity, is he planning to cultivate at night? Emoli. What? Tea leaves coo. Where did Master Emoli go today? Is he catching up on sleep? Emoli. Well, went to save the city. Emoli, go ahead. Super Heavy Armed Battleship MSC. Master Emoli's words are still so profound. Oh right, Master. When will you bring me along? Nuclear Doggy. Speaking of which, I seem to have found a bug in this game. Do you guys want to hear about it? Want to fuck off Foo's Angel? _ Hearing day in Magic City. _ Undying Tree of Pit. _ Cursed Eagle. _ Tea leaves coo. _ Super Heavy Armed Battleship MSC. _ Nuclear Doggy. Why do you have to show off your team spirit at a time like this? Give me a little more. System notification. The guild leader of the Black Dove Alliance has added 1 contribution point to player Nuclear Doggy. Doggy with a nuclear bomb. I don't want this kind of useless consolation. Speaking of which, guild leader, when are you going to stop spying on the screen? Emoli. Humans are essentially repeaters. Emoli, go ahead. After playing for a while, Emoli jumped down from the chair. I'm thirsty. She tilted her head and left the room to head to the kitchen on the first floor. On the way, she ran into Le Zhengjing, who seemed to be sleepwalking. Judging from the other party's route, if they walked any further, they might run into her room. Emoli skillfully carried the girl and placed her in front of Chiketsu's door. Not long after, she heard Chiketsu scream from inside the room. Then, Emoli saw Songyu, who was standing in front of Su Shenxing's door. Her face was red, and she seemed to be hesitating to enter. Songyu, who was shocked by Emoli, used a small bag of chocolates to bribe the little girl. Then, she escaped from Sakura's apartment with a suspicious blush on her face. Then, Emoli ran into Chihaya Fukuyama, who seemed to be heading to the kitchen. This deity seemed to be hungry and wanted to have a midnight snack. Before they reached the kitchen, Asahi Sakura Kanji appeared out of nowhere. She patted her chest, which was one of the best in Sakura's apartment, and said that everything was on her shoulders. A moment later, a big meal appeared in front of Emoli and Chihaya Fukuyama. Emoli observed 3 seconds of silence for the landlord, who was clueless about the missing ingredients in the fridge. Then, without any psychological burden, she began to eat the midnight snack in big mouthfuls. When she remembered that she came down to drink water, Chihaya Fukuyama and Asahi Sakura Kanji had already finished their midnight snacks and returned to their rooms to sleep. Emoli, you're still awake? Emoli boiled a pot of water. Just as she was considering if she should pour the water into the pot, a familiar voice came from the stairs. The little girl turned around and saw that the person who spoke was Qin Xingyan, who had just walked down the stairs. The girl was wearing sportswear and had a towel draped around her neck. She looked like she was going for morning exercises. She probably expressed her confusion about Qin Xingyan's outfit on her face. Qin Xingyan smiled and explained, "I recently joined a friend group called Late Night Cultivation. They've been talking about late night cultivation. I think it might be a method to speed up cultivation with the help of the stars and moonlight, so I've been experimenting for the past 2 days." Emily wanted to say something, but after thinking about it, she felt that it would be too troublesome to explain. So she simply nodded and said, "Have a safe trip." Qin Xingyan also returned a smile and left Sakura's apartment. Thus, Sakura's apartment, which was a little lively just now, once again fell into the silence of the night. Emily tilted her head in confusion. A year ago, this apartment had always been so quiet. Why did she feel a little uncomfortable now? Since when did she get used to the noisy apartment? Moreover, she didn't seem to dislike the feeling of noise. Now, although she still didn't like to get along with strangers, at least she wasn't as sensitive as before. Was this the result that the landlord wanted? Was this what he wanted her to become? Was she really growing in the direction that the landlord wanted her to grow? Emily tilted her head. Her small brain was processing these questions that seemed a little too complicated for her. She was clearly of the same mind as Su Xinxing. As long as her mind was slightly synchronized, she might be able to find the answer. But vaguely, Emily rejected this method from the bottom of her heart. After a long time, "Ah, the water is cold," the girl whispered. "Say it." Chapter 389. When Su Xinxing woke up, he found himself standing in the ruins of a city. Judging from the appearance of the buildings, it was probably modern or near modern. But although the words on the signboards and the like could be understood with the protection, Su Xinxing could be sure that they were unknown words that he had never come into contact with. "Spare me. I just came back from the dream of the Earth God, and now I've fallen into my own dream." He had a tired expression on his face. Although he was not sure whether this was a dream or not, Su Xinxing, who was used to time travel, routinely checked his condition. His physical condition was normal, only a little tired from lack of rest. Although his spiritual link with Jasmine wasn't broken, he still felt as if a transparent foam had been inserted in the middle. It was a kind of fuzzy feeling. This kind of situation would only happen when the two of them were separated by a world's barrier. Moreover, it had to be the kind of world that was more closed off. The holy sword was as usual, and Su Xinxing always felt that with the degree of self-consistency of this world, it could at least withstand one swing of his sword. So what should I do now? Perhaps 2 swings of the sword to split this world, through the protection of Sakura Apartment's sanctum, and return to Earth was a good choice. But after 2 swings of the sword, this world would probably be completely defeated. With such a doomsday wasteland, maybe there are no survivors. Even if it's destroyed, it shouldn't matter, right? Although that was what he said, Su Xinxing continued to walk along the abandoned road. Plants stubbornly broke through the road, covering most of the road with green, and he could vaguely see a lot of cars parked randomly on the road. Some of the cars seemed to have been modified. Not only were the exterior of the cars equipped with heavy armor, but there were also things like guardrails on the windows. But no human bodies could be found in the wreckage of the cars. Not even bones. But there were some faint traces of blood in places like the seat cushions. Could it be that the doomsday happened so long ago that even the bones had rotted away? Just as Su Xinxing guessed, he found that some of the goods in the shops were still intact. Although the dust on them showed that they had been left for a while, it was definitely not the kind of long time that even the bones had been decomposed. At this time, a gust of wind blew, and the dust on the ground that had accumulated for a long time was also swept up by the wind. For a moment, everything was yellow, giving a feeling of returning to Beijing on Earth. Su Xinxing narrowed his eyes. He was not distracted by the sudden wind, but this kind of harsh environment triggered memories of his past on the battlefield, and he became more focused. Soon after, he noticed that something was slowly walking out of a dilapidated building not far away. As the sandstorm subsided, The other party's true appearance was finally exposed to Su Xinxing's eyes. It was a big guy about 2 meters tall, and was about the size of a burly man. Compared to its burly body, its head was much smaller, about half the size of a normal person's head. Judging from its exposed metal joints, the camera on its head, and some other sci-fi parts on its body, it should be a robot. The robot seemed to have finally found Su Xinxing, and it slowly walked toward him with a ridiculous action similar to a big dog robot. Su Xinxing looked at the other without fear, intending to learn the specific situation of the world from the other party. Even if this guy was a Terminator, our protagonist was confident that he could twist it into a fried dough twist in 3 seconds. And it was the kind that was a specialty of Tianjin. Hello, I'm LB, the guide robot of the Ranachard Entertainment District. I'm glad to be of service. May I know your name? To Su Xinxing's surprise, the other party did not seem to be hostile. Instead, it asked him politely in the emotionless mechanical voice of a robot in a sci-fi movie. Could it be that in this world, human beings are kneeling, but robots and other creations are not affected? Or is it a situation similar to robotics, where human beings have migrated out of the earth? My name is Su Xinxing. After a moment of consideration, Su Xinxing simply gave up on this kind of thing that he was not good at, and told the robot his name. Okay, Mr. Su, what do you want to play? The robot asked. Su Xinxing said in his heart, the surroundings have become like this, what can I play? But after thinking for a moment he said to the robot, I want to leave here. Mr. Su, you want to go to the exit of the entertainment district, right? Please confirm your itinerary. The robot said rigidly. Yes. Su Xinxing could not help but feel that he was talking to a high-end version of Siri. Understood. Now I will begin to plan the shortest route for you. This is the center of the entertainment district. It is recommended to take the suspended elevated tram or subway. Su Xinxing looked at the tram carriage not far away, which had fallen face down like a trampled caterpillar due to the collapse of the elevated track, as well as the subway entrance on the other side, which had long been filled with water. At first glance, it looked turbid and bubbling. He suddenly felt that this broken robot was not reliable at all. No need, I'll walk. Okay, I'm planning a new route for you. Because it's almost evening, Mr. Su. Do you need me to book a hotel room for you? This robot is so annoying. Su Xinxing felt that maybe it was better to just find a random direction and run all the way than to listen to this robot's nonsense. But there was only one thing that this silly robot was right about. The sky was indeed darkening at a very fast rate. The star that played a role similar to the sun sank in the west, but there was no moon rising. What slowly appeared from the horizon was the star ring of this planet. To be honest, Su Xinxing had not been amazed by the fantastic scenery for a long time, but the star ring of this planet was beyond his expectations. The residual light of the star seemed to be broken down by the crystal body in the star ring, and finally turned into a colorful spectrum that was evenly smeared on the star ring. At first glance, it was as if there was a huge rainbow across the entire sky. It's really... Even Su Xinxing could not find any good adjectives to describe his mood at this time. However, just as he was immersed in the magnificence of the natural scenery, a hand clasped his shoulder from behind, and then suddenly pulled, as if it wanted to drag him back. Chapter 390. Of course, Su Xinxing wouldn't be pulled down by such a small force. So the creature that wanted to drag him back bumped into Su Xinxing's back and let out a small cry of surprise. Only then did Su Xinxing turn around and find a little girl in a strange white dress sitting on the ground, covering her head and crying out in pain. If that was all, Su Xinxing wouldn't be surprised. But what made him curious was that the girl had a pair of pointed triangular ears on her head, which looked a bit like a fox's ears, and a big furry tail near her buttocks. Su Xinxing had seen the beast-eared girl before. In a certain world, he was even worshipped as a god by a group of orcs, and the girls there were all standard beast-eared girls. But the problem was that the beast-eared girl in front of him now had a pair of human ears in addition to the ears on her head. After a long time, he squeezed out a sentence. Could it be the four tones? What? The girl obviously didn't know what the four tones meant, and just tilted her head at him in confusion. Then the girl seemed to think of something, and widened her eyes, waved her hands and shouted at Su Shinxing. "Hurry up and leave here, the monster is coming." Monster? Su Shinxing was still wondering what the girl was talking about, and the surrounding environment changed dramatically. Because this planet didn't seem to have any satellites that could reflect sunlight, after the sun sank below the horizon, the whole world suddenly became dark. And for some reason, even if you looked up at the night sky, you could only see a few lonely stars hanging in the sky. The only light source was the star ring near the horizon. Because of the refraction of sunlight, it looked like it was glowing. At the same time, in Su Shinxing's field of vision, countless basketball-sized balls of light floated up from the ground, like water droplets fusing with each other, and finally became many strange, big balls of light. Wah! Hurry up and run, or it'll be too late. The beast-eared girl looked at the scene in front of her timidly, and couldn't help but let out a cry. She crawled up from the ground, and ran into a dilapidated shop. But when she ran in, she found that Su Shinxing didn't follow her. She couldn't help but stick her head out. "Don't be in a daze. Hurry up." At this moment, the large ball of light closest to Su Shinxing stopped its initial aimless swaying and pounced towards him. Su Shinxing subconsciously wrapped his fist with a layer of cloud scales. With a punch, the ball of light was smashed into pieces and exploded into countless light spots the size of fireflies. However, this was not the end. A moment later, the small light spots gathered together and formed the big light ball again. This made Su Shinxing frown involuntarily. The tenacity of these balls of light was beyond his expectations. That's not right. Isn't its main body a ball of light? Su Shinxing once again smashed the ball of light in front of him into smithereens with a punch, but the ball of light still regenerated in a few short seconds. However, the main purpose of Su Shinxing's attack this time wasn't to smash the ball of light, but to sense the ball's condition through the cloud scales. This was one of old Su's few perception-type skills. It could only be used at a very close distance, when facing an enemy with extremely weak combat strength. Moreover, there were some subtle errors in the perception of the ball of light. After all, the cloud scales weren't used for this purpose. There seemed to be an unknown energy field around these balls of light. The so-called ball of light was a state produced when the energy was reflected on the material plane. Therefore, even if the ball of light was shattered, it was useless. In addition, this energy field seemed to be able to extract and convert the energy of living things by disintegrating their bodies, to obtain more energy to expand the energy field. In simpler terms, it could eat living things and turn them into its own power. Perhaps the other humans in this world were eaten by these balls of light. For a technological world at the level of Earth, this kind of invisible and intangible enemy was indeed difficult to deal with. It was not incomprehensible that the humans in this world suffered because of this. Therefore, Su Shinxing tried to release some of the magic power of Emoli in his body, and mixed it into the ball of light's energy field, disrupting its stability in an attempt to cause the energy field to spontaneously collapse. As a result, the ball of light became stronger. If it was only at the level of a car at first, it was now almost at the level of a bus, and a double-decker one at that. Well, it seemed that the magic power seemed to recognize the ball of light as a type of monster. So according to the characteristics of Emoli, it gave it a strengthening effect. "Mr. Su, are you dancing? If so, I suggest you go to the Wang Lanhua Ballroom on 5th Avenue in the entertainment district. New customers have a discount." The big black robot didn't become the target of the balls of light. It watched Su Shinxing shatter the balls of light again and again, and while studying their nature, it continued to nag and give suggestions. "Dance my ass." After several failed experiments, Su Shinxing simply punched down and erased the ball of light in front of him from the world along with its cause and effect. Only then did it stop the ball of light from regenerating. The problem was that there were now a lot of balls of light. If he really used this method on every single one of them, it was estimated that after a few hundred punches, the cause and effect of this world would collapse due to the accumulated errors. Although he might be able to return to the real world in this way, Su Shenxing still didn't want to achieve his wish by destroying the world, if it wasn't necessary. At this time, the sorrowful cry of the beast-eared girl came from the shop next door. In addition to Su Shenxing, there seemed to be other balls of light floating in the direction of the girl just now. In any case, she was the first living person Su Shenxing met in this world. If he wanted to know what happened in this world, asking her should be the simplest and most effective way. Even if it was only for this reason, Su Shenxing couldn't let her be eaten by these balls of light. Therefore, Su Shenxing didn't bother to pay attention to the balls of light that pounced on him, but couldn't even bite through the cloud scales. He ran directly into the house. He saw that the girl was huddled in the corner, fiddling with 2 wires in her hands, and several balls of light about the size of a crocodile were slowly approaching her feet. Just as Su Shenxing was about to destroy the balls of light, the wires in the girl's hands crackled and emitted a few electric sparks, and then the lights in the shabby room lit up. At the same time, the balls of light were like ice cubes under the sun, rapidly shrinking and dissolving, and finally disappeared from the lit room. Chapter 391. These things are actually afraid of light. Looking at the scene in front of him, Su Shenxing could not help but raise his eyebrows. He looked out and found that even the light balls outside the window were like beasts afraid of fire, floating away from the room. At first glance, it seemed to explain why these things did not appear during the day, but after thinking about it carefully, it was still very strange. If these strange energy field creatures, let's just treat them as creatures, were really afraid of light, then why didn't they appear in those rooms during the day? Many of the rooms seemed to have been remodeled. The windows were nailed with wooden strips. Even during the day, the rooms were in an extremely dim state. Before the sky turned dark, Su Shenxing also investigated those rooms, but did not find the existence of these light balls in them. In addition, if these things were really afraid of light, then it was impossible for humans to be killed by them. After all, it was not a big deal for humans to make a flashlight when they had even made radishes. Not only that, when Su Shenxing studied the light balls just now, he also confirmed that the energy field of the light balls was harmless to inanimate matter. In this way, the holes on the ground and the buildings in the distance, that obviously did not collapse naturally, could not be explained. Scared the hell out of me. The beast-eared girl finally relaxed. At this time, Su Shenxing found that her tail had been between her legs since just now. She looked very much like the Samoyed that always appeared at the alley of Sakura apartment when it was frightened by the firecrackers. Thinking of this, Su Shenxing actually felt that this silver-haired beast-eared girl actually looked a bit like a Samoyed from her ears and tail. Could it be that this little girl was really a Samoyed? Hello. The girl who relaxed found Su Shenxing and greeted him. Friend, where are you from? What are you doing in the entertainment district? Su Shenxing thought that his broken translation ability was getting more and more strange. He nodded slightly to the girl, who did not seem to be hostile. My name is Su Shenxing. As for where I came from, to be honest, I don't know how I came here. Who are you? He also knew that asking, who are you, was a bit rude to a young girl. But perhaps it was because Jasmine wasn't by his side that Su Shenxing couldn't calm his heart down. Thus his words were a bit. However, the beast-eared girl didn't seem to be unhappy about it. Instead, she wagged her tail and pounced on Su Shenxing. So are you really a friend from the outside world? That's great. I haven't seen my friends outside for a long time. What is it like outside? She looked even more like a dog now. And Su Shenxing was a little annoyed because he had lost the initiative to speak. He was not good at chatting with this kind of guy who acted like he was familiar with others. Speaking of which, do you know what those balls of light were? So he changed the topic. Thankfully, the cat-eared girl did not mention the name of the sky-blue monster. Otherwise, the book might have been moved to the doujinshi section due to copyright issues. If those monsters are misfits, they're misfits. That's what the teacher said. The beast-eared girl said proudly, and with her tail wagging faster and faster, it was as if the words praise me. "Praise me" were written all over her face. Teacher. This place gave off the feeling of a doomsday wasteland at first glance. There was actually a profession called a teacher? In that case, compared to this silly girl, it might be easier to find out what was going on in this world by looking for the teacher, right? As if she realized what Su Xinxing was thinking, the girl put her face in front of Su Xinxing. "Do you want to look for the teacher?" "Yes, if you can take me there, it would be a great help." Su Xinxing nodded. "No problem, but we have to wait for the sun to come out." The girl agreed without hesitation. "And there's one more thing." Yes. "Stay away from me. My face is about to touch," Su Xinxing said righteously. Oh. The girl was a little depressed and returned to her normal sitting posture. Her tail drooped to one side, and her ears collapsed softly. "Those light blobs. Are haunters afraid of light?" Since there was still some time before dawn, Su Xinxing asked. "Yes, they hate ultraviolet rays. The teacher said so." The girl nodded foolishly. "Although I don't know what ultraviolet rays are." In other words, those things were not afraid of ordinary light, but ultraviolet rays. Did the lights made by humans in this world also contain ultraviolet rays? Su Xinxing looked up at the light bulb, that seemed to be no different from the light bulb on Earth, and could not help but be curious. Ultraviolet rays were actually harmful to the human body. For example, it was easy to get skin cancer and cataracts. However, these side effects were naturally of no use to Su Xinxing. Then, other than the haunters that look like light blobs, are there any other forms of haunters? Thus, Su Xinxing continued to ask. "I don't know," the girl answered proudly. Speaking of which, there was no need to be proud at all, right? This is an adult store. I don't recommend Mr. Su to sleep here. If you are really interested in the products here, I suggest you buy some, and go to the Love Hotel 2 kilometers from here. The big black robot that had followed them into the store chattered endlessly. "Shut up." Su Xinxing felt that he was about to lose control of his desire to beat it into a pile of scrap metal. Chapter 392. After a little preparation, Su Xinxing was ready to set off with the beast-eared girl to the place where the teacher she mentioned was. Wait a minute. The beast-eared girl ran out of the room. After a while, she ran back with a few small cans in her hand. "Breakfast," she said concisely, and then stuffed the cans into Su Xinxing's hands. She looked at Su Xinxing with a smile, her tail wagging behind her as if waiting for his praise. Su Xinxing looked at the words on the cans. Although it was different from the food on Earth, through his protection, it was more or less the same as canned salted fish. It was just that the cans looked a little bloated, which was a common sign of fermented canned food. And the small line of words at the back of the can, "Please do not open it in public," reminded him of a famous Swedish product with an unfriendly smell. This is food that I've treasured for a long time. It's delicious," the girl quickly replied, her tone full of anticipation, which blocked Su Xinxing's "I don't want to eat heavy food in the morning." The corner of Su Xinxing's mouth twitched, and he helplessly opened the can. With a puff, a green gas visible to the naked eye rose from the can, and then spread in the room. Suddenly, a nauseating stench shrouded the entire room. Fortunately, the smell of this thing was not as strong as its relatives on Earth. It was only slightly heavier than stinky tofu. Whether it was physical or psychological, it could not cause a devastating blow to Su Xinxing. On the other hand, a siren-like thing suddenly rose from the head of the black robot, who had been silent for a while, and it sounded an alarm. "Warning, warning. A drastic change in the surrounding environment has been detected. It is estimated that it may cause sudden shock and other dangers. Please evacuate from here as soon as possible." Connecting to the communication channel of the Epidemic Prevention Center. Error. Reporting to the police. Error. Submitting an application for assistance to the Environmental Protection Organization. Error. After a few consecutive errors, the black robot seemed to have crashed. It was unknown whether it was because of too many errors that caused the data to overflow, or simply because it was suffocated by the stench. "By the way, don't you think this smell is a bit smelly?" Su Xinxing waved his hand in front of his face and asked the beast-eared girl. "Ugh, now that you mention it, when I first opened this thing, it was a disaster. If it wasn't for my teacher telling me that it could be eaten, I would have treated it as a weapon to deal with misfits. The white ears on the girl's head drooped down again. She seemed to have thought of something bad, and her expression was gloomy. If this was in a manga, it would probably be a face full of black lines. However, she quickly pulled herself together. Her expression brightened, and her furry tail began to wag once again. But this is really delicious. Although it was a little smelly, even the teacher said that this thing is very nutritious, and specially saved all of it for me. Su Xinxing said in his heart. That's because your teacher doesn't dare to eat it, you silly child. In the end, Su Xinxing couldn't resist the girl's kindness. He tried the canned salted fish, and found that the taste was actually not bad. Although the green gas that always rose in spirals made him a little concerned. After filling their stomachs with the girl's treasured canned food, they finally set off. The teacher's territory is in the park area, the girl said excitedly on the way. It's still very close to the entertainment area. Oh, is that so? Su Xinxing replied absent-mindedly. I hope it's not too far from here. The park area is about 26 kilometers away from the entertainment area. On the way, you'll have to pass through the commercial area and residential area. I recommend taking the elevated tram or subway. The big black robot that had finally recovered followed behind Su Xinxing. It probably took Su Xinxing's perfunctory words as a question, so it began to ramble on. What are elevated tram and subway? The beast-eared girl asked curiously. The big black robot fell silent, as if it didn't hear her. Hey, this is so boring. Why aren't you talking to me, Xiaohei? The girl complained in dissatisfaction. But then her attention was attracted by the butterflies on the side of the road. She laughed and chased after the butterflies. Fortunately, she didn't forget that Su Xinxing was also here. After chasing for a while, she ran back and followed Su Xinxing. Looking at the little girl who was literally flirting with flowers, and then being chased by bees, Su Xinxing felt that this trip didn't seem to be as boring as he thought. After walking for about an hour, a small river that wasn't too wide appeared in front of them. It could be seen that there was originally a bridge over the river, but now the bridge had collapsed. Only 2 broken bridges were left on both sides of the river. The broken bridge was about 5 or 6 meters away. Hey! The beast-eared girl took the lead and jumped over. Su Xinxing looked back at the big black robot. The other party was also staring back at him with the camera. Su Xinxing didn't think that the other party's 2 short legs had the function of jumping. Therefore, he simply grabbed the robot. Wah wah, wah, this doesn't conform to the procedure. The robot waved its 4 limbs, and the movement of its 2 short legs looked particularly comical. Damage to public property. Reporting error. Then Su Xinxing threw the robot over. The beast-eared girl pounced on the robot like a puppy catching a ball. She wanted to catch it, but in the end, she was directly pressed down by the robot with a cry. After a while, the girl climbed out from below. Her forehead was red. It seemed that she had been hit. The girl cried and made a pitiful sound. It hurts. Why is Xiaohei so heavy? Nonsense, because it's a radish. Is it an illusion? Su Xinxing frowned and shook his arm. When he picked up the robot just now, he actually felt the weight in his hand for a long time. No matter what, business was more important. So he suppressed the discomfort in his heart for the time being, and jumped toward the broken bridge on the opposite side. What? However, unlike what he thought, he didn't jump to the other side. Instead, he fell into the water. Su Xinxing, who didn't expect this to happen at all, hurriedly drank a mouthful of water. At this moment, the little girl who saw Su Xinxing fall into the water immediately jumped down from the bridge. She used her hands and feet to dog paddle to his side. Then, she bit Su Xinxing's clothes and pulled him to the shore. The big black robot, who had recovered, also came down from the broken bridge to the riverbank below. Seeing Su Xinxing, who fell into the water, it seemed to be very anxious and walked back and forth on the shore. Found a person who fell into the water, calling the police. Error, redial, error, redial, error. Can't you King stretch out your hand? Su Xinxing coughed and shouted at the robot. Although the beast-eared girl seemed to be a good swimmer, dog paddling wasn't a cost-effective way of swimming. In addition, the river's current was unexpectedly fast. It wouldn't take long for the girl to be exhausted. The robot lowered its head and looked at its plier-like hand. It seemed to be analyzing something, but it didn't take long for it to reach out to the little girl. The little girl naturally couldn't free her hand, so Su Xinxing, who finally recovered, reached out and held the big black robot's hand. Then the robot stepped back with its short legs and pulled the two people in the water ashore. Plop, 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 plop. As soon as the girl reached the shore, she shook vigorously like a puppy and splashed water on Su Xinxing's face. But Su Xinxing didn't have much strength to argue with her about this. He raised his hand and looked at his arm. He found that there were small red rashes on it. Damn, I got hit. It seemed that the feeling of powerlessness just now was not an illusion. The salted fish in the can in the morning should be the same type of seafood on Earth. But because of the different species, although it was not as intense as the seafood allergy on Earth, it still weakened Su Xinxing's state unconsciously. Of course, it was only his physical strength that was weakened. Old Su was still invulnerable and could survive in a star. Even if he really sank to the bottom of the river just now, he would probably choose between drinking the water of the entire river or exploding the entire river into the sky with cloud scales. After basking in the sun on the shore for a while, the three of them set off again. Speaking of which, I still don't know your name. On the way, Su Xinxing asked the little girl. By the way, the little girl had already recovered her vitality. Now she was learning to walk like a grasshopper-like creature, hopping around. My name is Pomeranian. Su Xinxing felt that he should really develop a new translation enhancement. Although this enhancement could convert some proper nouns into words similar to those on Earth, it was 2F** King weird for a Pomeranian to appear in this world. What's wrong? The girl's beast ears trembled as she asked curiously. No, nothing. Su Xinxing tried to focus his attention on a small yellow flower by the side of the road. Although Su Xinxing's first impression of this world was not very good, and he felt that it was barren, after walking for a while with the girl and the big robot, he realized that he seemed to be a little wrong. Indeed, there was no sign of normal humans in this world. Other than the little girl, there were no other human-like creatures. But if it was just plants and animals, they had seen a lot along the way. Among them, there were even behemoths that looked like elephants. However, the beasts here seemed to be quite docile. Even when they saw this strange group of people, they just looked at them curiously and did not have any intention of attacking. Of course, this might just be because so far, they only encountered herbivores and did not see any carnivores. As they walked, Su Xinxing realized that the path they were taking seemed to be a little strange. Why are we walking into the building? He asked the little girl who led the way. They were now in a super huge building. To be honest, when Su Xinxing was on Earth, he had never seen such a large and tall building. Is this big building called a building? What a strange name. The girl blinked and then continued to answer. Because this is the shortest way. Otherwise, we would have to take a long detour to reach the edge of the entertainment district. While talking, they came to a corridor of the building. The outside of the corridor was originally the surface of the building, but now the glass outside was broken, so they could clearly see the outside. In front of the building was a big river. The small river they just crossed seemed to be just a tributary of this big river. Looking around, the bridge that could cross the big river was indeed far away. Of course, if Su Xinxing's physical strength was not weakened because of allergies, this road could be reached in a few seconds with just a little bit of ordinary high-speed rail. Looking to the other side, they could see a similar building on the other side of the river. However, the building on the opposite side seemed to have been broken down from the middle. The broken half seemed to have crashed into the building on the other side, causing the two buildings to look like a small H. Even if he had not experienced a similar scene, Su Xinxing could imagine how much damage was caused when the opposite half of the building crashed into the building on this side. If it were not for the unusually majestic building on this side, it would have been destroyed under this blow. It's just that in this way, the two buildings also played a role similar to a bridge. The Battersea Commercial Building and the Gardenon Commercial Building were originally competitors. In order to make investors more confident and eager to invest in their own consortia, The two consortia spent a lot of money to build these two buildings. And these two super buildings across the Bain River became the landmark buildings of the entertainment district. The big black robot began to popularize the glorious history of these two buildings to Su Xinxing in a timely manner. I forgot to explain. The girl obviously didn't know what the big black robot meant. After tilting her head in confusion, she seemed to remember something and said, "The big house opposite. Well, the upper half of the building has no electricity, so there is no way to use guardian light. So if we still stay there at night, it will be very dangerous." After that, her big eyes stared at Su Xinxing. "Do you think we should stay here for the night? Or hurry up and run to the upper half of the big house before dark? You leave the choice to me?" Su Xinxing was a little surprised. "Yes." The girl nodded. "Because you look very smart. Xiao He only talks to you. And those words are very difficult to understand. Maybe you are a friend who is very good at thinking." If that's the case, Su Xinxing thought for a moment and made a decision. Reward updates and sweepstakes because I can't eat baddies full attendance. The blade is almost useless. So this time, the reward is limited to rewards and monthly votes. In units of days, rewards of 10,000 happy coins per day and 1 chapter per day. Now the ranking of the monthly votes is 75. On this basis, I will add 1 chapter for every 10 places I advance. After entering the top 15, I will add 1 chapter for every place I advance. Also, as everyone knows, although it's not that I can't write 10,000 words a day, the standard of the article will be greatly reduced. So, under the condition of ensuring the quality of the article, I can only write 3 chapters a day at most. Including the guaranteed minimum of 1 chapter. That's a maximum of 8,000 words a day. Rewards will not be accumulated, but the monthly votes will be accumulated. After all, Batty is not a friend who has a stockpile of chapters. After that, it is the lucky draw event for the Emily and other body pillows. Eligibility for the lucky draw. No matter how much, as long as friends have rewarded after April 1st, you can participate in the lucky draw. Please join the group 227626199 for the lucky draw. Remember to save your reward screenshots. In addition, from April 1st to 30th, readers who have rewarded 20,000 or students who want to buy a body pillow alone can directly message me after entering the group. As for the other 6 readers and 1 European king, if you are interested in body pillows, you can directly come to the group and ask me for them. After they are sold, I will send them to you for free. Because there might be some readers who think, "You scum author, you're actually taking advantage of your readers' good intentions to make money. Your old mother will be very sad if she finds out." So I'll just say it for the time being. Emily's body pillow draft is around 2,000 yen. Depending on the completion level, you may need to pay more. Even the cheapest seller I found on Taobao is 100 yen. For a 160 by 50 double-sided 2WT pillow. If you ask them to print it, you have to take the risk of having it stolen. In addition, even if there are readers who have rewarded 20,000, I will only get half of it. If you buy it in the group, I can guarantee that it will be sold at cost price, and there won't be too many. Not only will this event not make any money, but I'm also prepared to lose around 3,000 yuan. I'm just doing this to repay the readers for their support. If you still think that I'm not sincere, then there's nothing I can do. I'm also in despair. Also, students who did not get the body pillow prize do not need to be depressed, because I have prepared a color-changing mug and mouse pad for the 2nd and 3rd prizes. Of course, the pictures will only be the illustrations of the novel. I will not ask for a new manuscript like the body pillow. Finally, regarding the lucky draw, I want to see if I can find a friend who can do a live broadcast on Bilibili. If it is not possible, then I will have to draw lots. Well, this will only be held at the end of April anyway, so it is fine to discuss it slowly. In short, friends, what are you waiting for? Hurry up and join the group. Chapter 393. Su Xinxing had never been an adventurous person. Compared to slaying generals and capturing flags in the midst of a 1,000,000-strong army, he would rather lie comfortably at home, watch television and eat snacks. Although to a certain extent, it was more dangerous for him to lie at home and eat canned salted fish than to fight a million-strong army of monsters. In addition, his physical condition was not very good, so he finally decided to spend the night in the building where the power supply was still intact. He would go to the collapsed building the next morning. After finding a room in the building that was reasonably damaged, Su Shenxing and the others planned to stay in it for the night. This room was originally the part of the building that functioned as an office building. The room was full of writing desks and computer-like instruments, and a lot of messy folders. It could be seen that the users of this room did not have time to clean up when the apocalypse came and fled in a hurry. The floor was full of dirty printed papers. Su Shenxing even found a red lady's stiletto. Su Shenxing picked up a piece of paper with words on it and found that it was printed with words such as meeting notice. Office prohibits intercourse with the opposite sex. Anyone who opposes will have their head blown off. But intercourse with the same sex is allowed, and so on. So what was this office for? On the other side of the room was a window made of special glass. But unlike the one in the corridor, the glass here was not damaged and could act as a wall to block the wind. Because he was on the other side of the building, he naturally couldn't see the rolling river from here. But he could see more than half of the entertainment district's streets and buildings, making him feel like he was looking at a small mountain. Su Shenxing even found the street where he first appeared in this world, and the river where he fell into the water. It's done. As the beast-eared girl cheered, the lights in the room flashed. In fact, the sky was not completely dark, but the girl must have been frightened by the sneak yesterday, so she turned on the lights a little earlier. So lucky, there is water in this room. Then the girl ran around the office like a gust of wind and found the toilet on the side of the office. I can take a bath today. There is water? Su Shenxing was a little surprised by this. It was one thing to have electricity, but what if the human technology in this world had advanced to the point where they could develop unsupervised nuclear power? But how did this water supply system operate without any maintenance? Judging from the surrounding traces, this apocalypse must have happened at least a few years ago. It was really very curious. Of course, this was just curiosity. Because of falling into the water today, Su Shenxing did not want to see water for a short time. If Xiao Jingyi or his former bad friends knew about this, they would probably laugh themselves to death. Little Su, let's take a bath together. The beast-eared girl raised her hands and said to Su Shenxing energetically. She did not look like a person who walked for a day. I don't want to take a bath. What the hell is little Su? Wait, take a bath together? Su Shenxing was shocked. Were the people in this world so open-minded? Yes. The beast-eared girl revealed a smile that was as bright as the sun and nodded vigorously. Wait, there is a problem. Hey, aren't you going to stop her? Su Shenxing put the dirty printed paper in front of the black robot's camera. My name is LB. The robot corrected him and then tilted the camera. In addition, the sexual preference of the guest is not within the management of our Ranachard Entertainment District Guide robot. It doesn't matter. Wait, don't pull me. Damn, why are you so strong? In the end, Su Shenxing was pulled into the toilet by the girl without any resistance. Unfortunately, the romantic scene in his imagination did not appear. Perhaps it was due to the impact of the other building. The water pipe in the toilet was in a crooked position, pointing straight up. If the water valve was opened, the water would spray out like a shower head. It was indeed good for showering. The only thing that made people dissatisfied was probably the cold water. The problem was that the beast-eared girl was taking a shower with clothes on. Her clothes had been tested when she fished Su Shenxing out of the river. Even if it was wet, it would not have a translucent effect. Don't you take off your clothes when taking a shower? Su Shenxing asked gloomily. This. The girl pulled at her collar. It's fur. Who are you kidding? Don't tell me you don't take off your weight even when going to the toilet. As if she had heard Su Shenxing's thoughts, the girl slightly lifted a corner of her short skirt when she was washing her body. Su Shenxing's face turned red when he saw her naked body under her skirt. He subconsciously covered his nose, although there would not be a nosebleed. So he sighed in his heart again. The people in this world are so F***ing open. Why didn't the other worlds I experienced before give such benefits? In order to prevent distracting thoughts from increasing, Su Shenxing simply took off his shirt and poured cold water on himself. Anyway, since Yun Lin did not flick the water away, it meant that the water was at least harmless to him. Oh, so amazing. The girl looked at Su Shenxing's naked upper body and couldn't help but shake her ears and exclaim. Su Shenxing's body shape was not that of a strong man like a bodybuilder. Even when he was wearing clothes, he looked a little thin and weak. But the years of experience in the other world also gave him a body that could be said to be strong and muscular. If he took off his clothes, he was still very powerful. And the most important thing was that the muscles of his body were very coordinated with his body shape. If it had to be said, he should belong to the relatively well-proportioned type. There was no sense of delicate features, a strong back and a bare waist. Of course, the girl was not lamenting about this, but the scars on Su Shenxing's body. His body was full of scars, among which there were more scars on his back. On the contrary, there were not many scars on his chest and front. Some scars, judging from the size and location of the injuries, were fatal enough to kill ordinary people. Why are there no scars on the front? The girl asked curiously. Probably because the person facing the front is always the enemy. Su Shenxing was silent for a moment, and then softly replied. And the wounds left by the enemy are only on the body, which can be easily healed. Chapter 394. The girl didn't know why Su Shenxing's mood suddenly dropped, but she could feel the sadness in Su Shenxing's heart. She stuck out her tongue and licked his face. This gave Su Shenxing a fright, and he quickly distanced himself from the girl. To be honest, he was also very surprised. Why did he reveal his true feelings in front of a girl he had only known for a day? It must be because of his allergies and the loss of his physical fitness, causing him to become weak. This wouldn't do. In this world, he was the only one who couldn't become weak. Thus, Su Shenxing patted his cheeks to cheer himself up. Of course, the main reason why I didn't get any scars was because none of the enemies were my match, so they couldn't hurt me. Oh, little Su, you're amazing. The beast-eared girl didn't doubt him at all. She praised him from the bottom of her heart, and at the same time, she wagged her tail even more vigorously. The water droplets falling from the sky were smacked by her tail and splashed in all directions. Okay, I've received your admiration. Stop wagging. Su Shenxing, who was slapped in the face, could only awkwardly comfort the little girl. For some reason, the depression in Su Shenxing's heart wasn't as serious as before. After laughing for a while, Su Shenxing and the beast-eared girl left the bathroom together. But as soon as they walked out of the room, the girl started to shake her body, and once again, she splashed Su Shenxing with water. Even the clothes he took off to prevent getting wet were not spared. If it was in the past, Su Shenxing would probably show a scary smile and grab the girl back to let her experience the care of humanists. But now, Su Shenxing just shrugged indifferently and watched the girl run to the wall socket. The black robot seemed to be charging itself. Xiaohei dinner. The girl reached out to the robot. The robot was still silent. After a while, it made a ding sound that sounded like a microwave oven. Then its chest opened and two things were spat out from it. The girl picked up the two items and ran to Su Shenxing to present them as treasures. One of them looked like a pizza rack, but it was actually a mixture of energy bars and compressed biscuits. The other one was a bag of jelly, but it seemed to have a lot of water in it. Will it give you something to eat? Su Shenxing asked, puzzled. Ever since they met, the big black robot didn't seem to care much about the little girl, but it would give her something to eat. This felt a little strange. Yes, about every 3 sunsets, my friends can ask Xiaohei for food. Other than that, they can only look for food themselves. The little girl nodded and replied. In other words, this girl had given her quota to him? Su Shenxing didn't take the food. He just patted the little girl's head. This made the little girl reveal a very comfortable expression. Her ears drooped down softly, and her snow-white tail swung back and forth. Don't worry, I'll give it a try. After saying that, Su Shenxing walked over to the robot. The little girl showed a disappointed expression, because she stopped patting her head. Then he asked the robot, "Hey, can you give me something to eat?" "Yes, you can take any of the emergency food here. But for your health, I suggest that you only need one nutritional biscuit and a bag of semi-solid fruit juice for each meal." After that it paused and added, "Also, my name is LB, Mr. Su." So Su Shenxing, who successfully received the food, naturally won the little girl's "You're awesome!" exclamation. To be honest, the taste of the emergency food could only be considered ordinary, but the little girl seemed to be very happy eating it. What kind of life did she live normally? After eating dinner, the group planned to sleep and rest well, so that they could continue the operation tomorrow. The little girl curled up under a desk. After all, if the light was too strong, it would have some effect on her sleep. Perhaps it was because a lot of things had happened today that made her a little tired. Now, she was already asleep, revealing a sweet and somewhat silly sleeping face. Su Shenxing casually found a corner to sleep in. Next to him was a floor-to-ceiling glass window. Looking out, one could see that there were a few light spots in the dark entertainment area. Those light spots were not the light emitted by light clusters, but light tubes like the one here. Probably each light spot represented a survivor or a friend. Su Shenxing's imagination ran wild, and he slowly fell asleep. If there were no accidents, this should be the case. But at this time an accident happened. There was a loud rumble in the street below. Even Su Shenxing, who was in the building, could vaguely feel a slight vibration. What happened? The little girl was suddenly awakened and asked in a panic. "Someone is being chased by a specter." Su Shenxing, who woke up one step earlier, looked down from the glass window. He could see that on the street below, there were two small figures holding flashlights running for their lives. And behind them, hiss! Su Shenxing heard the beast-eared girl suck in a breath of cold air. It was a specter, whose shape and size were beyond the normal state. Looking down from the building, the light monster at first glance looked like a giant salamander with 17 or 18 legs, which was commonly known as a giant salamander. However, compared to the light orbs that Su Shenxing had encountered before, the largest one was only the size of a bus. This giant salamander's body occupied an 8-lane road, and even more than half of the sidewalks on both sides of the road were occupied. Its body length was also exaggerated to be more than a kilometer long. On such a wide straight road, only less than half of its body was exposed. It was like the monsters that only Ultraman could deal with in Japanese movies. Not good. A specter actually has such a huge body? Su Shenxing frowned slightly. If he was discovered by this thing, it would be a bit troublesome. Normally it wouldn't be a problem. After all, the body size was just a decoration. On the contrary, it was easier to become a target, and he wouldn't miss with a casual punch. However, his physical condition was not very good now. There was no way to recreate the scene of a few punches, erasing the enemy from the root of cause and effect. If it really didn't work, he could only summon Roland and give it a shot. But in this way, the beast-eared girl might be affected by Roland's power. Chapter 395. I have to save them. While Su Shenxing was still thinking about what to do, the little girl stood up from the window without hesitation. It seemed that she wanted to run down the corridor and bring the two people who were running away here. Wait a minute. Su Shenxing stopped her. Aren't you afraid of the monster below? I'm scared to death, the girl said confidently. But this is my territory. I have to help my friends who are in danger. Really? Su Shenxing scratched his head helplessly and opened the window. The window of this kind of high-rise building could only be opened at a very small angle. But maybe it was the special hobby of the boss of this office. The window in this room happened to be the kind that could be moved horizontally and opened to a considerable extent. A gust of cold night wind blew in. Then Su Shenxing waved to the girl, and the beast-eared girl ran to Su Shenxing's side. She raised her little head and looked at him with her big eyes full of doubts. Our hero didn't explain much. He just picked her up and jumped out of the window. Aha! The little girl, who was not mentally prepared, was so scared that she immediately hugged Su Shenxing tightly and screamed loudly. Su Shenxing had the cloud scale firmly wrap the two of them to prevent the girl from falling to her death. wrapped in the cloud scale invisible to the naked eye. The two of them fell from the sky like bullets and shot into the head of the giant baby fish. Suddenly, the head of the salamander monster seemed to explode from the inside. It exploded into many small orbs of light. In the center of the monster's head, Su Xinxing lifted the back of the girl, who was still a little dizzy. After putting an indestructible protection on the beast-eared girl, he threw her back and said, "Go and take those two guys away. I'll buy some time." The little girl rolled on the ground and barely dissipated the impact. She looked at Su Xinxing with a complicated expression and then shouted, Little Su, you must survive." Then she turned around and ran quickly to the two people. At the same time, the small light balls quickly gathered together, as if time was flowing backward, and formed the giant baby fish head again. Its head was so big that it didn't feel crowded, even if there were more than a dozen people playing mahjong in it, as long as it opened its mouth. In addition, as long as this huge monster moved its terrifying body slightly, the cars, trees, fire hydrants, phone booths, and the like on the side of the road would immediately be crushed into pieces. With every step it took, a large pit at least 1 meter deep would appear on the ground. Unlike the light balls of the ghosts, this monster had surpassed the invisible and intangible energy limit and reached the level where it could easily interfere with the state of matter. The reason why the two guys who ran away were able to last so long without being eaten was that they would shine the flashlight in their hands on the monster from time to time, making the monster, which still retained its instinctive fear of light, wary. In fact, the ultraviolet rays of the flashlight in this world had limited lethality to the monster. Once the monster noticed this and lost its fear of light, the two of them would soon be eaten. Su Xinxing was different. He didn't have a flashlight, so the giant baby fish monster attacked him directly. The monster raised its fat claw high, and then slammed it down on Su Xinxing's head. Su Xinxing just raised his right hand. A moment later, the monster's claw exploded into many small balls of light. However, due to the force of the claw, a quarter of Su Xinxing's body was smashed into the ground. Although the monster couldn't even make Su Xinxing lose HP, Su Xinxing's current physical condition was indeed a little inconvenient. He couldn't compete with the monster in terms of strength. If this continued, he might be beaten into the ground by the monster. The only thing he could be thankful for now was that in addition to being afraid of light, the other characteristic of this light ball ghost was that it would not go around looking for other creatures before it finished off the creatures in front of it. At least he didn't have to worry about this giant monster looking for trouble with the beast-eared girls. At this moment, Su Xinxing seemed to feel a slight tremor coming from the ground through the cloud scale. His heart sank. Speaking of which, where did the other half of the monster's body go? Before he could warn the beast-eared girls behind him who were running away, the monster's giant tail had already broken through the ground and sent him flying. He crashed into the roadside building like a meteorite. Obviously, after being beaten up by Su Xinxing twice, the monster had discovered that Su Xinxing, this guy who had almost absolute defense, was a freak who couldn't be crushed, chewed, or stepped on. What would a person do if they encountered a smelly, hard, and indestructible pebble on the road? Of course they would forgive, of course they would pick it up and throw it away. And Su Xinxing, without his original strength, was sent flying by the monster's tail like a baseball. It seemed that the monster not only had a certain level of intelligence, but its level of intelligence might be a little more powerful than he thought. Su Xinxing silently added to the monster in his heart. At the same time, because of the monster's tail attack, the entrance to the building was blocked by falling rocks. It wouldn't be so easy to come in for a while. Therefore, the beast-eared girl could only continue to run forward with the two rescued people. Although the monster's attacks could occasionally be blocked by the beast-eared girl, who had indestructible protection, it couldn't go on like this. At this time, the big, silly robot had run into this half-destroyed room at some point. Its camera was focused on Su Xinxing, who was in the ruins, and it began to speak after a long time. Calling emergency number, error downloading emergency information, error preparing cardiac pacing shock, charging, no need. Su Xinxing sat up from the ruins. He patted the cement debris off his head with a serious expression. He had begun to consider whether to summon Roland Duel to slash the monster to death. But the problem was that his current control of power could be said to be at the lowest point in his life. If he used Roland Duel in this state, not to mention this planet, even this world might be chopped into pieces. Even if he was lucky enough to control the destructive power below the level of destruction, it was almost certain that the beast-eared lowly and the others nearby would be affected. "Good evening, Mr. Su. Is there anything you need?" At this time, the big black robot asked Su Shinxing. Su Shinxing pondered for a moment, and then an idea flashed in his mind. Chapter 396. By the way, Dehei, can you turn on those street lights on the road? Su Shinxing asked the big black robot. To be honest, he didn't have much hope. After all, whether the street lights on a street could be turned on or not was definitely not something a robot could decide. Even if Dehei could turn on the street lights, Su Shinxing was just an ordinary customer to it. It certainly wouldn't turn on the street lights on an entire street just because of a customer's request. Therefore, the final answer should be no or insufficient authority, or something like that. Passing the agreement, error, no authority. You must have a higher level of authority to do this. Unsurprisingly, the robot made a negative answer for the first time. But then it didn't stop, but continued. Resubmit. Change the request to for the convenience of the customer. Turn on the street lights in the Ranachard Entertainment District at night. Submitting the agreement. The agreement has been approved. Dehei. Su Shinxing couldn't help but be a little surprised by the robot's performance. Until today, this guy's performance was just an ordinary robot, but he didn't expect it to have such flexible behavior now. It's just a small matter. The robot opened and closed its plier-like hands. Also, my name is LB, Mr. Su. This kind of thing is up to you. Su Shinxing turned his head and looked outside. The road was still dark, and the street lights were not turned on. Was it damaged in the battle just now? As soon as this thought came to mind, the robot Dehei suddenly raised its arm, pointed to an iron suitcase on the side of the road, and said to Su Shinxing, "The air safety switch on this street is in a closed state and needs to be reactivated. The power supply box is over there." "I'm sorry, Mr. Su, that's all I can do." "It's okay, you've done a great job." Su Shinxing patted it, then took 3 steps and 2, and jumped out of the building again. After landing heavily with a bang, he shouted to the beast-eared little girl not far away. "Hang in there for a while. I'll solve everything right away." "Little Su, that's great, you're fine." When the girl saw that Su Shinxing was safe and sound, she was obviously very happy. Her originally exhausted look also recovered a little. Her 2 beastly ears perked up. With the help of the indestructible protection and the torchlight of the 2 people behind her, she withstood the monster's attack. Su Shinxing took this opportunity to rush to the power supply box. The power supply box in this world was obviously different from the one on Earth. At least, Su Shinxing had never heard of an air safety system in the power supply box on Earth. After opening the box, it was filled with switches. Now is not the time to slowly read the words on the side and find the name of this street. Therefore, Su Shinxing simply turned on all the switches that were in a closed state. As a result, the surrounding street lights lit up. If one were to look down from the sky, they would be able to see that all the street lights in the entertainment district began to flicker. Then, they lit up together like a vast sea of stars, dispelling the darkness in the area. Almost all the light clusters of spirits dissolved and disappeared under the illumination of the street lights. The other creatures in the entertainment district, who were still in their rooms, curiously poked their heads out and looked at the road that was as bright as day. This was a scene they had never seen since they were born. Not only the street lights, but also some other facilities in the entertainment district were revived. For example, the huge LCD screens on some buildings were playing the advertisements of the peaceful era like a long, long time ago. After the huge monster was surrounded by the sea of light, it stopped moving and then began to dissolve. Although it was much slower than the light clusters of spirits, There was no doubt that it would eventually disappear completely in this sea of light. Amazing! When Su Shenxing was lost in thought as he looked at a commercial building not far away, the beast-eared girl had already pounced on him, like a fierce tiger released from its cage. Fortunately, Su Shenxing reacted quickly and immediately turned off the automatic counterattack of the cloud scale. Otherwise, something big would have happened. I knew it. Little Su must be a very powerful friend. The little girl rubbed Su Shenxing's face and exclaimed with a smile. From the beginning to the end, her trust in Su Shenxing did not change at all. Anyway, let's go back to the room first. Su Shenxing took her off his body and said with a wry smile. Just as he was cleaning up the fallen stones and walking into the building, Su Shenxing could not help but look at the huge LCD screen that was playing the advertisement in the distance. The humans in the advertisement did not have beast ears. My name is Bratter, thank you for your help. Among the rescued people, one of them was a girl wearing a sweater that looked much heavier than the Pomeranians. Although her beast ears were not as wide and cute as the Pomeranians, they were the standard delicate triangular cat ears. Her long hair was gray and white. She looked very beautiful, her eyes were round, and her whole person was filled with a pure and lovely aristocratic lady aura. If Pomeranians were said to be cute, then she was pure beauty. Just like her appearance, the girl expressed her gratitude to Su Shenxing in a very polite manner. My name is Golden Bear, nice to meet you. The other one was much more lively. She was shorter than the Pomeranian, and was a young girl by human standards. She had shoulder-length blonde hair, and the beast ears on her head were different from the Pomeranians and Bratters. They were the kind that was round. Her appearance was not beautiful, but her small face with some baby fat, and her small animal-like actions were the epitome of the word cute. Why are you wandering outside at night? The Pomeranian asked them curiously. There are ghosts at night. It's the most dangerous time. Didn't this teacher emphasize it from the beginning? Because I'm nocturnal. Ha! Golden Bear was chopped in the face by Bratter before she finished speaking. The other party is our savior, you can't lie, understand? Even if she chopped in the face with a hand knife, the girl's movements were still very elegant, which made the Pomeranian girl very envious. Actually, we were planning to go out to look for treasure. Since her companion had exposed her, Golden Bear could only give up and tell the real purpose. Do you know? It is said that there was a treasure nearby that could grant wishes. Treasure? The Pomeranian girl became even more curious. Yes, I found this in the ancient books in the teacher's house. It can't be wrong. As she spoke, the golden silk bear excitedly took out a well-preserved thick book. This is a relic from the old era. It recorded that the treasure was infinitely powerful, and many people were enthusiastic about it. Su Shenxing looked at the title of the book and couldn't help but feel embarrassed. It said Fighting the Heavens, a classic that 30 million readers went crazy for. Chapter 397. Bratter and Golden Silk Bear both sent invitations to Su Shenxing, hoping that they could join their treasure hunting team. However, Su Shenxing knew from the very beginning that their treasure hunting journey would soon come to an end, so naturally, he would not agree. The Pomeranian girl, on the other hand, was very interested in it. However, she still decided to travel with Su Shenxing in the end. Speaking of which, Pomeranian, you're different from our wandering friends. You're a territorial friend, right? Then why did you travel with little Su? For some reason, Bratta also called Su Shenxing Xiao Xiao Su like the Pomeranians, which made our protagonist depressed. I did it unknowingly. It's probably because little Su smells really good. The girl tilted her head and said, Besides, my territory is the entertainment district. Initially, I was a little worried about what to do after leaving the entertainment district. But now, with Xiaohei around, Lil Su shouldn't have any problems. After a pause, she continued. Also, there are many friends in the business district. Xiao Xiao Su is so powerful. She will definitely become friends with them soon, and go to the teacher's place together. Hearing what she said, Su Shenxing felt a little regretful, but he didn't urge her to stay. After all, Su Shenxing had traveled to more than 10,000 worlds. Along the way, he had made countless friends and experienced countless parting. No matter how unforgettable the sorrow of parting was, it would eventually be worn away by time. At this point he was already used to parting. Moreover, if he thought about it carefully, his existence would only tie the girl to his side and make her experience more danger. If he wasn't here, it might be better. Hey, when can we reach the edge of the entertainment district? Thinking of this, Su Xinxing asked. We're taking a shortcut. If everything goes well, we'll reach the intersection of the entertainment district and the business district before noon tomorrow. Just like before, the big dark-skinned man replied with an emotionless electronic voice. Hey, Xiao He actually spoke. Bratter revealed a surprised expression. Unbelievable. Could it be the influence of that treasure? The golden silk bear happily shook the suspected pirated novel in its hand, and its baby fat face was full of excitement. However, the dark-skinned man ignored them as usual. It seems like Xiao He only knows how to talk to little Su. As expected of little Su, she's amazing. The Pomeranian girl explained in a low voice. What's going on? Bradolf's eyes widened, and he looked very curious. Could it be that you know something about the treasure? The golden silk bear also came over. How about I trade my sunflower seeds with you? Su Xinxing suddenly had a bad feeling. Speaking of which, why sunflower seeds? The night passed in silence. After saying goodbye the next day, Bratter and the golden bear left. Su Xinxing, who had been annoyed by the two guys all night, yawned and looked at his wrist. The rash had not subsided. He moved his body a little, and found that his condition was no different from yesterday. From the looks of it, salted fish is resentment. This world's seafood allergy doesn't seem to recover that quickly. The next thing to do was to move from the building on this side to the building on the opposite side. Although it didn't seem difficult, because the opposite building had fallen diagonally on this building, the floor would have a very large slope. If one wasn't careful, one would slip and fall directly into the river below. It would be like sitting on a slide, falling directly from the glassless bottom into the river below. Perhaps it was because they were about to separate, but the beast-eared girl didn't seem to be in a good mood. Fortunately, even if his physical strength had declined, his agility wasn't affected too much. Su Xinxing, who had been tested on the battlefield in another world, still had this skill. Along the way, except for He, who slipped a few times with her short legs, and was quickly caught by Su Xinxing and the beast-eared girl, there were no other accidents. Just as they were about to reach the lower half of the building, Su Xinxing didn't know if it was an illusion, but he felt that the ground under his feet seemed to be shaking subtly. But soon, when the ear-piercing sound of steel bars breaking came from the concrete, Su Xinxing realized that it wasn't an illusion. Not good, this half of the building is going to fall into the river. He didn't know if it was because of yesterday's battle, or because it was too old and couldn't bear the burden. But the biggest accident happened when they were walking in the building that had collapsed for so long. Run quickly, escape into the lower half of the building, and we'll be fine. In fact, even if they entered the lower half of the building, they might be hit by the reinforced concrete or buried alive. However, compared to falling into the water with the upper half of a building that weighed tens of thousands of tons, the first two were much easier to deal with. As long as Su Xinxing opened up the cloud scale a little and used it as a protective shield, it would be fine. But they still couldn't escape in time. In an instant, a sense of weightlessness enveloped everyone. About a few seconds later, a large amount of river water poured into the building. The momentum was so fierce that it was even comparable to a flood. If this continued, about a minute later, they would be buried alive by half of the building at the bottom of the river. Even if Su Xinxing was fine, after all, this guy didn't need to breathe to survive. He and the beast-eared girl would definitely be fine. They had no choice but to take a little risk. So Su Xinxing gathered the cloud scale on his fist, and then blasted it toward the wall. Suddenly, a big hole was blasted open in the wall. The river water poured in fiercely. Su Xinxing grabbed He and the beast-eared girl with both hands, and opened up the cloud scale to make a waterproof ring. Then he forced himself to jump and swam out of the building before it sank to the bottom. Halfway through, the beast-eared girl, who was dizzy from the fall, finally came to her senses and began to use her doggy paddle to share the weight of Dehei with Su Xinxing. After a long time, they emerged from the river and then dragged Dehei out of the water to the shore. From here, they could vaguely see that only half of the building was left. It seemed that they weren't carried too far away by the river. Dehei, are you okay? Su Xinxing knocked on Dehei's camera. Fortunately, Dehei seemed to have been waterproof. After soaking in the river for a while, it didn't crash. After a while, Dehei spoke in its usual mechanical voice. Now, I want to reevaluate the danger level of the word shortcut in the vocabulary. Evaluation complete. Uploading vocabulary error. Chapter 398. After going ashore, they were much closer to the commercial district. After a short break, the group continued to move in the direction of the commercial district. This time, it was really a safe journey, without any trouble. After walking for about 2 hours, with a collapsed overpass as the dividing line, the architectural style on both sides had undergone a huge change. Mr. Su, this is the dividing line between the entertainment district and the commercial district. The big black robot introduced to Su Xinxing. Unlike the entertainment district, the commercial district has more than 150,000 shops and specialized shops. Among them, there is no lack of international brands with great popularity and influence. This also makes the Ranachar commercial district the center of the world's attention for luxury goods, cutting-edge products, and contemporary fashion trends. Really, this is the commercial district, Su Xinxing said with some emotion. Along the way, although there were many high-rise buildings on the side of the road in the entertainment district, there were more other types of buildings with different styles. For example, similar to the Rococo-style opera house during the European Renaissance on Earth, this type of building, even if it had become very dilapidated, was still full of strong cultural color and artistic style. On the other side of the overpass, it was like Shanghai in the Celestial Empire or Ginza in Fuzhou. From the outside, it was the purest commercial street. As far as the eye could see, there were rows upon rows of modern and minimalist shops. Even if there were occasionally some shops with different styles that used European or postmodern decorations, there weren't many of them overall. Moreover, the seemingly unrestrained shop specifications were actually strictly in accordance with construction requirements and didn't really stand out too much. It was not difficult to imagine how prosperous this place was in the past. However, because of the arrival of the doomsday, the empty streets now looked particularly desolate. In short, the two sides were like two different worlds, incompatible. Little Su, I can only send you here. Walking to the edge of the overpass, the beast-eared girl stopped. Her face, which had always been full of vitality, seemed to be regretful and hesitant at this time. Really? Don't you want to go with us? Although Su Xinxing had heard that the beast-eared girl would not follow him all the way to the place where his teacher was, he was still a little reluctant to part with her. After all, excluding Dehei, the girl was the first person he met in this world. I'm sorry, little Su. I'm a territorial friend, and I've already passed the ignorant period of becoming a friend. If I casually go to another friend's territory now, I might be attacked by them. The girl lowered her head. Her pointy beast ears collapsed and her tail drooped behind her. She looked very depressed. I don't want to cause you trouble. It's fine. I'm not afraid of trouble. Su Xinxing tried hard to swallow the words that almost escaped his mouth. Indeed, from his point of view, this situation was not a big deal at all. But he would leave this world sooner or later. Instead of continuing to stay with the girl, and making the parting even more difficult, it was better to part with her now. What's more, Su Xinxing was also afraid of his protagonist's physique, that would often cause some trouble. Now that he was in a bad state, there was no way for him to make a comprehensive response to all accidents. If the girl was hurt because of this, he was afraid that he would feel very uncomfortable in his heart. After a moment of silence, Su Xinxing suddenly walked toward the black robot. Hey, how much emergency food do you have now? Mr. Su, my name is LB. Dahei patiently corrected him and then replied, I still have 13 nutritional biscuits, which are mainly divided into 3 flavors: minced meat, sesame and chive. 7 bags of semi-solid juice, which only have orange juice and apple juice, and 3 bottles of distilled water of 250 milliliters each. If you want more food, you have to wait for me to go to the supply station to resupply. Take it all out. Okay, as you wish. With a ding sound, Dahe opened its chest cavity, which seemed to be a small refrigerated unit. It poured out all the emergency food and water stored in it to Su Xinxing. But please let me confirm a little, you won't use it for illegal profit, right? I won't do that kind of thing. Su Xinxing methodically caught all the things, then walked quickly to the girl and stuffed all the things in his arms into the girl's arms. Wah! The girl hurriedly caught the things in her arms in a panic. In order to make sure that the things in her arms did not fall out, she could only stagger there, trying to stabilize her center of gravity. She blinked her big round eyes and asked with a little surprise, Xiao Su. Eat well in the future. Don't eat salted fish or canned food. Su Xinxing turned around, put his left hand in his trouser pocket, waved his right hand, and left the girl with a back view. Thank you for these 2 days. As he said that, he quickly walked to the business district. Dahe's chest cavity closed, and its camera looked at the little girl who was holding a pile of food and clean water, which were especially precious in this world of ruins, and stood there in a daze, looking at Su Xinxing's back. After that, it also turned back to the camera, walked with its short legs, and followed Su Xinxing, who was leaving. Thud! A bag of nutrition biscuits that looked like a Snickers bar fell to the ground. Then, a lot of things fell to the ground with a series of crackling sounds. This made Su Xinxing curiously turn around, wanting to see what happened. In the end, he only saw a white shadow flash, and a soft and budding body crashed into his arms. Girl, you. Sure enough, I'm still worried, so I decided to follow you for a while. The little girl who threw herself into Su Xinxing's arms had a bright and warm smile on her face. Then your territory. It would be a lie to say that he was not surprised, but Su Xinxing still could not let it go. He stroked the girl's head and asked softly, Hee, it's so itchy. Although she said that, the girl still rubbed her little head against Su Xinxing's palm. She happily wagged her tail and replied cheerfully, It's okay if it's a territory, although it may be a little hard. But before I find a new territory, I'll be a stray dog for a while. So Su Xinxing could only smile and stroke the dog's head without saying a word. Found abandoned emergency food. Recycle. And Dahe tactfully ran to the back, picked up the pile of things that the girl had left behind, and stuffed them back into its chest cavity. Chapter 399. After the beast-eared girl made the decision to go with Su Xinxing, she was in a much better mood. She was so happy that it felt weird. No, judging from her silly and happy personality, she should be in a good mood. It didn't take long for her to fall asleep. The reason was simple. I didn't expect it to rain so heavily all of a sudden. While taking shelter from the rain, Su Xinxing looked at the rain with extremely low visibility outside and sighed. There was still the sun just now. Because Ranachard is a large artificial island located in the subtropical zone of the Pacific Ocean, the weather changes more at this time of the year. In addition, the commercial district is close to the coast, so the feeling is more intuitive. Perhaps Dahe mistook Su Xinxing's exclamation as a question. He immediately explained in his monotonous mechanical voice. Although there were many high-rise buildings in the commercial district, the floors were generally not high, probably because of the pedestrian street nearby. Almost none of the houses on this street exceeded 5 floors. The place where Su Xinxing and the others took shelter from the rain seemed to be a fast food restaurant, the kind that sold fried chicken and chips. Because it was quite old, the house no longer had the smell of fried oil that was commonly seen in shops. Instead, there were large green spots on the floor that should have been mold, dark red traces that could be blood or ketchup, and Coke cups that had yet to be decomposed. It wasn't easy to make up my mind to take little Su to the teacher. I didn't expect to be so unlucky. The beast-eared girl lay lazily on the cashier counter. Her ears were half closed, and she was fiddling with her fluffy tail in boredom. I don't know when the rain will stop. Su Xinxing was also a little helpless. although he could use the waterproof protection to prevent his body from getting wet. First of all, the vision was too poor. If he fell into the sewer halfway, the loss would outweigh the gain. Second of all, Su Xinxing's current physical strength could only maintain 1 or 2 temporary protection at most. The feeling of walking in the water was not very good, so there was really no need to spend so much effort to rush forward in the heavy rain. Third, and the most important point, under such circumstances, it seemed that some special types of ghosts would appear, and it would be more dangerous to go forward in the rain. It was for the same reason that he didn't open up his cloud scale to hasten his journey. Connecting to the weather consultation channel error. You're as useless as always. Wah. Dehei looked as if he had been struck by Su Xinxing. His body was trembling nonstop, and a strange sound effect was playing from the speaker. At this moment, the beast-eared little girl suddenly raised her head. The ears on her head also stood up and moved slightly, as if she had heard something. What happened? Su Xinxing, who was looking at a light ball that looked like a goldfish swimming in the heavy rain outside the window, naturally noticed the little girl's abnormality and asked casually, "Oh, there seems to be something over there." Before she could finish her sentence, she pounced towards a direction in the room. At the same time, a black shadow suddenly jumped up from under the table and dodged the girl's attack. Then the girl and the black shadow chased each other in the shop, knocking down countless tables and chairs. After a while, the beast-eared little girl finally caught the black shadow and pressed the other party's shoulders firmly with both hands, pressing the other party firmly under her body. Sure enough, the one who was caught was also a beast-eared loli. From this point of view, Su Xinxing felt that he vaguely understood the nature of this world. Other things aside, the god of creation of this world was definitely a lolicon. The beast-eared girl had short brown and black hair. Her beast-eared ears were different from those of the Pomeranians, Bratter, and the golden silk bear. Although her beast-eared ears were also triangular, they were obviously slightly smaller than those of the Pomeranians and Bratter. Although they were also very cute, their fur was much shorter than Bratter's. What was even more different was that her clothes were much cooler than those of the Pomeranian and Bratter. She wore a short-sleeved t-shirt with tiger-like patterns and short hot pants, revealing her white arms and thighs. Although her figure was as poor as the Pomeranians, she was surprisingly sexy. She wore snow-white long-sleeved gloves on her hands and snow-white long leather boots on her feet. Her long and slender tail was the same as her clothes, which were also brown and black ring-shaped. Caught it! The Pomeranian girl and the new beast-eared girl panted at the same frequency, but they wagged their tails and said with a silly smile, "Woo meow meow, damn intruder." The latter struggled desperately, and in the end, she really overturned the Pomeranian girl and successfully regained her freedom. She jumped hard and jumped far away. She arched her back slightly, clawed her hands, and made a threatening sound from her throat. She stared vigilantly at the Pomeranian girl, who didn't realize that she had been treated as an enemy. Okay, that's enough. So Su Xinxing clapped his hands and attracted the attention of the two to himself. What the hell are you? However, the new beast-eared girl didn't give up her vigilance. She just shrank her body behind an overturned table, revealing half of her face. She stared vigilantly at Su Xinxing and the others, and her tail wagged uneasily. "We're not things, we're friends." The Pomeranian girl corrected her with a serious face. Although her words made Su Xinxing feel that he seemed to have been subtly insulted as well. "My name is Su Xinxing, this girl is a Pomeranian, and this is..." Su Xinxing tried to use the negotiation, non-physical, skill that he hadn't used for a long time. After introducing himself, he introduced the Pomeranian and Dehei to the other party. "You're Xiaohei, right?" "I know that," the new beast-eared girl interrupted. "Yes, that's right." Su Xinxing nodded, then reached out and grabbed the Pomeranian's collar. "Besides, if your tail continues to wag like that, the Pomeranian girl won't be able to resist biting you." He dash. "You're really enemies." The new beast-eared girl was so scared that her hair stood on end. It was not a metaphor, but she was really like a kitten, with her hair standing on end. "We're not enemies. We're friends." Because Su Xinxing grabbed her collar, the Pomeranian girl who couldn't pounce on the other party's tail raised her hand again and corrected the other party righteously. What kind of friend are you? The beast-eared girl hesitated for a long time. When she saw that Su Xinxing didn't take any further action, she whispered, "My name is Li Hua." Chapter 400. Speaking of which, I have heard of the name Pomeranian. Then, the dragonly girl pointed at the Pomeranian, who did not understand the situation and shouted, "Aren't you the owner of the entertainment district? Since you are here, it means that your entertainment district is finally going to make a move on the commercial district." "No, I am now traveling with Xiao Xiao Su to find the teacher. The entertainment district's territory has been given up." The Pomeranian girl immediately retorted, "Then what are you going to do after you find the teacher?" The dragonly girl asked. "Of course, we are going to look for a new territory." The Pomeranian answered naturally. "See, you really have a plan for my territory in the commercial district, right?" The dragonly girl said loudly in a tone like a detective who found the criminal's flaw. No, I am just going to find the teacher, with Xiao Xiao Su now. What about after you find the teacher? We are going to find a new territory. So in the end, you are still coveting my territory. No. The conversation over there seemed to have fallen into some kind of endless loop. This made Su Xinxing, who originally wanted to save his breath, have to interrupt the two idiots. After he carefully explained the purpose of his group to the dragonly girl, the other party showed a skeptical look. "Are you really just passing through this area? And so let us wait until the rain stops." Su Xinxing nodded. "Listening to you, it should be the sooner you see the teacher, the better, right?" The other party asked again. "Is it really okay to dawdle here?" "Yes, I am also in a hurry." In this regard, Su Xinxing also had some headaches. He did not expect to encounter so many troublesome situations along the way. After this commercial district, there was a residential area waiting for him. After passing through the residential area and reaching the final park area, this trip was officially over. At the current speed, he was afraid that he could only reach the residential area tomorrow. It would take at least the day after tomorrow to reach the park area and find the legendary teacher. But it is raining so heavily outside, and there is also mischief inside. There is no way to travel properly. I have a way. The dragonly girl abruptly continued Su Xinxing's words. This surprised both Su Xinxing and the Pomeranian. The Pomeranian even fell because Su Xinxing subconsciously let go of the back of her clothes. Under the street, there is a sewer. It is very wide, and it is not affected by the heavy rain. You can use it. You can go through the commercial district to the residential area. Lily didn't care about them. She just stuck out her chest and said proudly, "That's my secret passage." Lily, you are actually so generous to let us use your secret passage? The Pomeranian climbed up from the ground with both feet, revealing a surprised expression. "I was wrong about you. I thought you were a mish of calm." The entrance to the sewer was in the kitchen of the fast food restaurant. Although Su Xinxing found it strange that a fast food restaurant could be directly connected to the sewer, God knows how long the person who knew the inside story had been dead. Therefore, he didn't dwell on this matter and followed the dragonly girl into the sewer. Behind him was the Pomeranian and Hay. There were lights in the sewer, but there was a small broken lamp every 100 meters. This made the overall brightness of the sewer very low. Fortunately, there was no trace of mischief so far. It is so dark. The Pomeranian groaned slightly behind Su Xinxing. "That's why you dog friends are so troublesome. It is so bright here." The dragonly girl who was walking in front looked indifferent. "But I didn't expect the sewer to be so wide. It is incredible." Su Xinxing looked up and found that the cylindrical sewer was more than 5 meters high. There was a sewage channel in the middle, and there were walkways on both sides. Su Xinxing and the others were on the right side of the walkway. The walkway was shorter than the center, but it was still at least 3 meters high. For Su Xinxing, who lived in the Celestial Empire, he had never seen such a wide sewer before. Because the humans in this world were probably extinct, The water in the sewer was not dirty. It felt similar to the river outside. But even so, Su Shenxing still didn't want to go in. This is the sewer of the Ranachard Commercial District. It's built nearly 10 meters below the ground to ensure that it won't collapse and affect normal life. Its strong sewage treatment ability was one of the selling points of the Ranachard Commercial District at that time. Later, this sewer, which was originally planned to be built only in the commercial district, was extended to the residential district and was widely praised. It's one of the most satisfactory infrastructure facilities in the entire Ranachard. The big black robot introduced it to Su Shenxing. Xiaohei can talk. Dragonly, who was walking at the front, was literally shocked. She almost fell into the sewage channel. Hee. I was shocked at first too. Seeing that someone had a similar reaction to her, the Pomeranian girl was overjoyed. It's just that Xiaohei only talks to Xiao Su and ignores us. Xiao Su is really amazing. I'm not interested anyway. Dragonly glanced at Dehei a few more times. After realizing that the other party ignored her, she angrily walked to the front and led the way. Occasionally, they would pass by some places that were obviously manholes. However, there were raindrops leaking from the edge of the manhole cover, indicating that the weather outside had not improved and it was still raining. Is it an illusion? The flow of water in the sewage channel seems to have sped up, Su Shenxing said curiously. That's because the underground sewer has the effect of drainage. It ensures that even if there is a large amount of precipitation, it will not affect the normal operation of the city above. Dehei continued to answer. During this time, the group also saw many forks in the road. Some of the forks did not have electric lights. They did not know if the lights were broken or something else. In short, they could vaguely see ghosts in the shape of light wandering inside. Fortunately, they had Dragonly, who was familiar with the path, to lead the way. Otherwise, they would have gotten lost in the twists and turns. As for Dehei, connecting to the satellite, activating the GPS function, error. Other than feeding, this robot's functions did not seem to be working normally. Chapter 401. After walking for a long time, Su Shenxing was still staring at a sign above that said, Mao Pipeline Maintenance, so that your shop won't have any toilet blockages. The Dragonly girl suddenly stopped when she was studying the manhole cover to see if the logo of the uncle with the red hat had infringed on the copyright. Fortunately, Su Shenxing, who was behind her, had gotten used to the darkness and his vision had almost recovered. Otherwise, he might have bumped into her. After all, this girl didn't make any sound when she walked. What's wrong? Su Shenxing asked in a low voice. In fact, there was nothing wrong with talking loudly here. But the atmosphere of this horror game made Su Shenxing unable to help but speak in a low voice. The light in front seems to be broken. There's no light. The Dragonly girl replied in a low voice. In other words, there might be a spirit. Su Shenxing continued to ask. But this time, the girl didn't answer him. Instead, she took out a portable flashlight from her pocket, turned on the switch, and shone it into the darkness ahead. Wait for me here. I'll go ahead and take a look. After saying that, she ran into the dark tunnel and shone her flashlight left and right. Finally, she showed a satisfied expression and waved the flashlight at Su Shenxing and the others. There's no problem, come here. But the Pomeranian girl opened her eyes wide and looked behind her. Su Shenxing had already taken a step forward, wanting to run to her side as soon as possible. Behind Dragonly, a monster that looked like an enlarged version of an earthworm appeared from the wall, but its size was far larger than an earthworm. It was like the legendary sandworm monster. And this monster was attacking the girl. Maybe Su Shenxing's physical strength had recovered a little, or maybe the girl was not destined to die. At the last moment, Su Shenxing grabbed her clothes and threw her out of the battlefield. Instead, Su Shenxing's entire body was swallowed up by the huge goo. The Dragonly bounced on the ground and fell into the water with a splash. The Pomeranian hurried over to pull her out. The reason why she didn't save Su Shenxing was that in the Pomeranian girl's mind, the awesome Su Shenxing didn't need her help. Yes, that was the truth. After a muffled explosion, Su Xinxing was spat out of the other party's mouth. Along with him were a few small clusters of light, but those small clusters of light were quickly sucked back in by it. Su Xinxing took advantage of the opportunity to roll on the ground, easily dispersing that little bit of strength. Then he took a step and ran in the direction of the Pomeranian and Li Hua. The giant sandworm-shaped Harry immediately chased after them. Its body was so huge that it almost occupied the entire sewer. Therefore, the dim lights couldn't do much damage to it. They could only burn off a thin layer of its skin, which had almost no effect. Su Xinxing didn't want to be eaten by that thing again. If he was swallowed again, he was afraid that he would need to rest for about 10 minutes before he could have the strength to do what he did just now and blast the other party from the inside until it spat him out. "Run!" he shouted. So, the Pomeranian and Li Hua, who had recovered from their shock, started running together. The He, who had the shortest legs, immediately fell to the back. Just as the sandworm-shaped Harry was about to catch up with Su Xinxing again, Su Xinxing, just like Ma Ao, suddenly jumped with force. Cloud Scale gathered in his hand and punched the manhole cover that he was studying just now. Suddenly, the manhole cover and the surrounding cement were blown away by the force of Cloud Scale. Bright sunlight shone in from the hole. The sandworm-shaped Harry was like an octopus tentacle that had touched fire. It reflexively wanted to shrink back. But Su Xinxing wouldn't let it slip away. So, he used the Cloud Scale to form a step under his feet, and used the force to change his direction. Then, using the force of falling, he punched the sandworm's head. If this thing had a head. The front end of the sandworm-shaped Harry immediately exploded, turning into small balls of light. If it was still as huge as before, the sunlight that shone in from the manhole wouldn't be enough to destroy it at once. Its thick skin was enough to ensure that half of it would melt before it could escape from the light. But now, after it was shattered, the small balls of light were all destroyed in just one move. For example, it was like a big block of ice and many small blocks of ice. The former would definitely melt slower than the latter. The second half of the sandworm-shaped Harry twisted wildly in the sewer, due to the destruction of the first half. The last half of the wall of the sewer collapsed under the pressure. The giant sandworm-shaped Harry disappeared completely. It was unknown whether it melted or escaped back into the ground. He won. The Dragonly girl, who had survived the disaster, felt her legs go soft. She sat on the ground and looked at Su Xinxing in disbelief. "I knew it. Lil Su is really amazing." The Pomeranian girl pounced on Su Xinxing again and wanted to stick out her little tongue to lick him. This made the latter a little flustered. "How did you know that the rain outside had stopped?" the Dragonly girl asked Su Xinxing curiously. "Because the manhole covers we passed by before were leaking. But this one didn't leak," Su Xinxing answered casually. "Maybe it's just because this cover is better sealed?" The Dragonly girl was not convinced and retorted. "If that's the case, won't your reckless plan completely fail? Then I'll just treat it as my misjudgment. I'll find another opportunity to eliminate the opponent later. Anyway, there's no rule that says there's only one chance. If I fail, I can just try again." Pushing the Pomeranian girl's head aside, Su Xinxing shrugged and replied, "There's an old saying in my hometown. It's called Noswa no die. Oh no, its failure is the mother of success. If I fail, I can just try again." The Dragonly girl lowered her head and pondered for a moment. Then she raised her head again and looked at Su Xinxing curiously. "You're called Lil Su, right? What kind of friend are you?" "No, I'm not called by that strange name," Su Xinxing shouted in his heart. However, he felt that it would be troublesome to argue on this point, so he could only suppress his desire to complain, and answered seriously. "I'm a friend of the horrifying upright ape." "Horrifying upright ape? It sounds amazing." The Pomeranian girl wagged her tail and looked excited. No one knew what she was happy about. Lil Su is really amazing. Horrifying upright ape? What, isn't this a very cool name? The Dragonly girl pouted and muttered softly. Chapter 402. Since the rain had stopped and the sewers had collapsed, there was no need to continue walking underground. If there is a chance, wait until you find the teacher and know what you want to know. Then you can come to the commercial district to play. The dragonly girl seemed to be a little shy as she whispered to Su Xinxing. There are a lot of interesting things and beautiful places here. Okay, I will definitely come back to play. Before Su Xinxing could answer, the Pomeranian girl inserted her head between the two and replied very familiarly. Go away, meow. I didn't invite you, stupid dog. I'm not stupid. The teacher said that Pomeranians are super smart. Pomeranians are as smart as vegetarians. By the way, in the IQ ranking of dogs on Earth, Pomeranians were 23rd, while vegetarians were 78th. Oh! The dragonly girl skillfully ignored the Pomeranian girl's stupidity with a cat-like indifference. After saying goodbye to the dragonly girl, Su Xinxing and the others once again moved toward the residential area. When Su Xinxing was in the entertainment area, he saw a lot of vegetation at first glance. After entering the commercial district from the entertainment area, he saw a lonely commercial street with almost no green. So he always thought that there was no vegetation in the commercial district. But when he came out of the sewers, he realized that he was wrong. There was vegetation in the commercial district, and the closer to the residential area, the denser the vegetation was. On the contrary, the buildings became more and more dilapidated. How far are we from the residential area? While eating a semi-solid drink, well, it was actually something similar to jelly, Su Xinxing asked Dehei. GPS positioning failed. Turning to image capture, database comparison and speculation. Positioning completed. Dehei first muttered to himself for a while, then replied, according to my database comparison, we will soon reach the residential area. Very close, very close. This road is getting more and more difficult. Su Xinxing tried to drill through some kind of cypress tree that was like a wall, patted off the leaves on his head, and complained. On the other hand, the beast-eared girl seemed to like this kind of place that was obviously beginning to have a natural tendency. She ran around in the bushes and seemed to be having a lot of fun. That happy look always reminded Su Xinxing of the Samoyed running around in the park near Sakura apartment. Could this be a special talent that all dogs had? Don't worry, Mr. Su. As long as you walk out of the thicket in front of you, the road will be much easier to walk on. Dehei's camera turned to face Su Xinxing and said to him, oh, that's great. Let me go and take a look without any expectations. As he spoke, Su Xinxing pushed aside the thicket and strode forward. Then he directly fell from the cliff into the sea with a Doppler effect and screamed, F***CK, 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 F***CK. Wah, little Su. Many. By the time Su Xinxing climbed ashore with the help of the beast-eared little girl, Dehei was already facing the vast ocean in front of him. He was trembling nonstop and had crashed. Where's the residential area that we agreed on? Su Xinxing felt that he had been through a lot these days, and couldn't help but feel a little unhappy. Isn't this the F***King Ocean? Huh. I clearly came to the entertainment area from here before. The beast-eared little girl tilted her head and stared at the sea, somewhat puzzled. When she said that, Su Xinxing also felt that something was wrong. If either the beast-eared little girl or Dehei led him the wrong way, it would make sense. But if both of them led him the wrong way at the same time, how could it make sense? Looking at the calm ocean in front of him, Su Xinxing suddenly had an idea. So he took the beast-eared little girl and ran to the place that was about to become a primitive jungle. He found a few tree vines and twisted them into a simple hemp rope. As for Dehei, he was still blowing the sea breeze on the beach and repeatedly saying, many, as he crashed. After that, Su Xinxing tied the hemp rope around his body and tied the other end to a tree by the shore. When I pull the rope, pull me up, understand? He then instructed the little girl. The beast-eared little girl wagged her tail and nodded. Her face was filled with a bright expression that said, I understand. Only then did Su Xinxing jump into the sea again. As expected, the sea here was very calm, and there were no strange ocean currents below, so Su Xinxing's operation went very smoothly. Not long after, he dived deep enough to see what he wanted to see. Coincidentally, The rope also reached its end at this time, so he couldn't continue to dive and look carefully. So he pulled the rope. The little girl on the shore began to pull the rope, and Su Xinxing out of the water. Seeing the little girl's expression that said, "Come and praise me, come and praise me," Su Xinxing could only use his wet hand to pat her head. "Good job, thank you." Only then did the beast-eared little girl show a satisfied expression. Then, because her head was wet, she began to tremble again. "I see the ground is sinking." What Su Xinxing saw at the bottom of the water were many buildings that had sunk under the water. Although the buildings had their own characteristics, they were just residential buildings. Judging from the buildings, the city under the water should be the so-called residential area. After receiving the news from Su Xinxing, Dehe finally got out of the crash state. Although this guy didn't seem to be of any use even if he didn't crash. The local database has been updated, uploading cloud data. Error reconnecting error. As expected, he wasn't of any use. Thus, Su Xinxing didn't care about Dehe who was stuck in an endless loop. He continued, "Because the ground is sinking, it's basically impossible to go to the park from here. How long would it take to take a detour?" Although he could directly walk from the bottom of the sea, because he didn't need to breathe, Dehe and the beast-eared girl couldn't do it. Without them leading the way, Su Xinxing most likely wouldn't be able to find the so-called teacher. Therefore, even though it might take more time, he could only try to take a detour. "I don't know," the beast-eared girl happily replied, "because I don't know any other roads." This made Su Xinxing have a strong urge to play OTZ. "Don't I have any reliable people around me?" At this moment, old Su missed Xingyin a dream and Emily. The former was at least rational most of the time, and the latter was at least useful most of the time. Just as Su Xinxing was thinking of an unreliable method, such as throwing Dehe into the water, something suddenly fell from a tree on the shore. Chapter 403. It was a little girl who fell from the tree. To be honest, Su Xinxing was almost used to this situation. But this new girl was different from the ones he had met before. She didn't have animal ears. The girl's hair was long and draped down her back, but the color of her hair was very interesting. It was a gradual change of red, yellow and green. Only the fringe on her forehead seemed to be dyed white. In addition, her hairstyle was very strange. The texture of her hair gave people a feather-like feeling. Her clothing was a rare sports vest with a zipper. The vest's hem extended to below the base of her thighs. The color was bright yellow, and the material of the vest was a little strange. It felt a little fluffy, because the base of her thighs was covered by the sports vest, and below it were bare thighs. It was impossible to tell whether the girl was wearing a bottom or not. But even if she was wearing it, considering the length, it was probably just sports shorts or bruma. "Oh, I failed again." She rubbed her butt. While she was sad because of the pain of falling, there was also an unconcealable sense of loss in her tone. "Ah, a new friend that I haven't seen before has appeared." The beast-eared girl pointed at the other party and shouted energetically. The girl who fell from the tree was obviously frightened by her. She turned around and stared at the Pomeranian girl without blinking. If it was an ordinary person being stared at like this, they would probably feel uncomfortable or even frightened. But the beast-eared girl was naturally overly optimistic and curious. Obviously, she could not be considered an ordinary person. "I'm a Pomeranian. What kind of friend are you?" So she moved closer to the other party and asked curiously. Because Su Xinxing did not feel any hostility from the girl who fell from the tree, he let the beast-eared girl do whatever she wanted. In fact, the previous experience had proven that it would be better to let the Pomeranian girl, who was always foolishly happy, disrupt the other party's rhythm and mislead the other party's way of thinking. Then he would explain the situation to her. "Ah, my name is King Kong." The girl who fell from the tree unexpectedly showed a flattered expression and answered timidly. Her answer made Su Xinxing choke for a moment, and the latter could only subconsciously size up the other party. Although his appearance was much cooler than his plain friends like Pomeranians, his weak appearance didn't make him look like someone who could climb to the top of the Empire State Building to shoot a plane, nor did he look like someone who would shout burning_loved at any time. "Oh, King Kong? It feels so powerful. The beast-eared girl revealed an astonished expression. Hey, how could it be? The girl who fell from the tree said modestly, a little embarrassed. King Kong, are you all right? At this time, another girl slowly climbed down from the tree and asked worriedly. But then she saw Su Shinxing and his people under the tree. Wow, you scared me. Who are you? However, from the way he moved, it didn't seem like he was frightened. Like King Kong, she didn't have beast ears. She was wearing a large long-sleeved leather jacket. The leather was dark green in color, and the leather was a little strange. It was like low-quality crocodile leather, with a subtle rough feeling. The leather jacket also had a hood, and it was unknown whether she was shy or habitual. But she had been wearing the hood since she showed up, only revealing half of her face and green bangs. This was also different from King Kong. The girl's clothes were more conservative. Although it was also impossible to tell whether she was wearing a bottom, her leather jacket was much bigger than King Kong's sports vest. With gloves and long leather boots, except for her face, only a small part of her white lotus-like calf was exposed. Without waiting for Su Shinxing to speak, the beast-eared girl once again ran over and circled around the other party, who still hadn't come down from the tree. Hello. My name is Pomeranian. What kind of friend are you? So Su Shinxing also quieted down and waited for the other party to answer. He thought to himself, if your name is Pomeranian, I'm going to call the police. Hello, my name is Lu Heng. The other party bowed to the beast-eared girl, and because her hands left the tree, she fell down and followed in King Kong's footsteps. Because the cliff wasn't a good place to chat, Su Shinxing and the others followed the two new girls to their current resting place. While resting, they also learned a little about their story. Lu Heng was the owner of this secondary forest. Although she was different from Pomeranian and Dragonly, this could still be considered her territory. King Kong, on the other hand, was a homeless friend from the residential area. However, King Kong's home wasn't in the residential area, but in the park area further north. Due to the sinking of the residential area, it was impossible for her to walk back to her home on land. At the same time, due to her weak body, it was impossible for her to travel long distances around the residential area. She couldn't even hunt for food on her own. Before she met Lu Heng, she had to rely on the little black dogs to feed her once every 3 days. She had to eat one meal after another to survive. But this doesn't mean that King Kong doesn't have any strengths. Different friends are good at different things. In fact, King Kong is a rare bird friend. For some reason, Lu Heng proudly said to Su Shinxing and the others, as long as she practices hard, sooner or later, she will be able to fly freely in the blue sky. As long as she could learn how to fly, she would naturally be able to fly over the residential area and reach the park area. So you're saying that you were practicing flying just now? Su Shinxing suddenly realized. The temporary resting place was an abandoned coffee shop. The signboard of the coffee shop was covered with creepers. One could barely make out the name of the coffee shop, which was made up of the initials R and H. Although the outside looked a little shabby, the inside was very clean. Su Shinxing even found a coffee machine and a can of sealed coffee beans that hadn't gone bad. Thanks to them, Su Shinxing and the others could still drink a cup of hot coffee, although the coffee had lost its taste because it had been preserved for too long. Yeah, if it's just me, it seems that I can't teach King Kong how to fly well. If you can come and help, that would be great. Lu Heng was a little perplexed and asked Su Shinxing for help. However, King Kong, as the person involved, didn't seem to care at all. He was still secretly eating coffee beans when no one was paying attention. But we're in a bit of a hurry now. Su Shinxing was a little embarrassed. If possible, I hope to rush to the park area as soon as possible. About this, I have a suggestion. Lu Heng smiled slightly and sipped the coffee. Then, she stuck out her tongue, because she wasn't used to the bitter taste of the coffee. Chapter 404. Su Shinxing looked at her with a, I'd like to hear more expression. On the other hand, the beast-eared girl was already lying on the shabby sofa, because she couldn't stand the bitter taste of the coffee. Her tail drooped to the side, and she looked like a useless dog. If you plan to take a detour, I'm afraid it will take a long time. After all, the journey around the residential area is much longer than the journey from the entertainment district to the business district. Lu Heng continued. But if you can teach King Kong how to fly in a short period of time, then I can give you the door of the shop as a raft. Then, I can help you convince King Kong to pull the raft for you in the sky and send you to the park. After hearing her words, Su Xinxing thought for a few seconds and looked at Dehei, who was charging. The latter's camera was fixed on Su Xinxing and she said, Mr. Su, do you want to go to the toilet? I can plan the nearest toilet route for you. No way. Su Xinxing sighed helplessly. He felt like he had overestimated Dehei's intelligence. So he could only ask, is the detour to the park really longer than the journey we took the past few days? Submitting your question to customer service, please wait. Error. Resubmitting. Error, customer service is busy. Searching for local help failed. Performing self-calculation and database analysis. Dehei muttered in her own style for a moment before replying. According to the 75th edition of the Elite School Map, the journey around the residential area is more than 3 times longer than the journey we took so far. Oh, Xiaohei can talk. Lu Heng was slightly surprised. Then she returned to her previous lazy look. Forget it. There's nothing to be surprised about. Compared to this, what's your answer? All right, I'll agree to your proposal for the time being. However, we can't stay here forever. So at most 1 day. If she doesn't have any clues within a day, then I can only judge that a detour is more realistic and leave this place. Only then did Su Xinxing speak with a face full of shrewdness. Business is business, I understand. Lu Heng didn't insist. Instead, she nodded and agreed with Su Xinxing. So Su Xinxing, who had a kind smile, and Lu Heng, who was expressionless but surprisingly scary, turned their heads and looked at King Kong. King Kong, who was secretly eating coffee beans, shivered. He didn't notice that they had reached an agreement. No matter how much you cry now. This line doesn't seem right. Su Xinxing rubbed his face. He was used to pretending to be a villain, so he found his original intention to help King Kong. He said righteously, Actually, I'm heartbroken too. But in order for you to learn how to fly as soon as possible, I had to do this. Liar, you clearly showed a very happy smile. Cough cough, you saw wrong. Su Xinxing continued to pretend to be sanctimonious. In order to train the cubs, lions will throw them off the cliff. After they are covered in bruises, they will learn to be strong and independent. You see, what we are doing now is more or less the same. Strictly speaking, Dehei suddenly added, throwing the cubs of lions off the cliff will cause them to die. The animal that does this is actually an eagle. Oh, is that so? Su Xinxing said this and kicked King Kong off the cliff at the same time. In the end, no matter how hard he tried to flap his arms, it was useless. In the end, he screamed and fell straight into the water, sinking into it with a splash. Girl, pull him up. Su Xinxing patted the beast-eared girl's head and ordered her. Oh! The beast-eared girl jumped off the cliff, as if she had found a fun game. Not long after, she dragged King Kong back to the shore. Spare me. This time, they were not at the edge of a cliff, but at an ordinary seaside. However, King Kong was trembling as he hugged a coconut tree that wasn't too thick, and was very resilient. There was a rope tied to the top of the coconut tree. After Lu Heng tied the rope, Su Xinxing and the others pulled the tree into a tug-of-war. Using the rope, they bent the tree in the opposite direction of the sea. It was like a slingshot that had been pulled to its limit. Sorry, I just thought about it. As expected, a simple weightless fall won't let you experience the feeling of flying. So this time, the focus is on the feeling of flying. Su Xinxing sincerely apologized to King Kong. However, in King Kong's eyes, he was even scarier than a demon. Don't worry. Our friend's body seems to be quite strong. Even if we use this thing, he won't get hurt. Even if he won't get hurt, it's still super scary. King Kong wanted to cry but had no tears. He was so scared that even his hair became fluffy. Oh, is that so? Su Xinxing said this and pulled the rope at the same time. Thus, King Kong screamed and drew a parabola in the sky that was not beautiful at all. The way he waved his arms in the sky, but it was completely useless. For some reason, it reminded Su Xinxing of an old hen. Little girl, go and get him back. Even if King Kong hadn't fallen into the sea, Su Xinxing had already patted the beast-eared girl's little head. The girl happily ran over and dog-paddled to where King Kong fell. Could it be that this little girl thought what Su Xinxing was doing was like a game of frisbee? Mr. Su, DeHay said again. It's not good to abuse animals. You're mistaken, Su Xinxing continued to say seriously. I'm just helping him learn how to fly. This is what the so-called education is all about. Is that so? Yes. Su Xinxing's face was serious as he answered with certainty. As it turned out, Su Xinxing's education method was basically useless. Until evening, King Kong still hadn't learned how to fly. Not only that, but something bad also happened. During dinner, Lu Heng couldn't find King Kong no matter how hard he tried. Everyone searched for him for a long time but couldn't find him. In the end, Su Xinxing had to come to a conclusion that wasn't too optimistic. King Kong was probably afraid of his hellish training and ran away. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.